Chapter 893. Wei Wuyan was extremely puzzled. Could it be that talking to my sister can force a breakthrough in cultivation? What kind of explanation is this? It's a pity that my sister has passed away for so many years. Otherwise, I would also like to talk to her. Otherwise, how can Chu Yang's breakthrough be explained? It's simply unbelievable. That night, the three of them said that they stayed for a night, but actually, none of them slept. Wei Wuyan was surprised. He was thinking carefully about what was going on. Could this be another kind of epiphany during cultivation? Using kinship for epiphany? Or using blood relations for epiphany? Great blood payer Wei Wuyan thought until the latter half of the night. The more he thought, the more ridiculous and the more upset he became. He only felt dizzy and gave up. Chu Le was thinking, my illness is going to be cured soon. So many years of suffering have finally come to an end. The Big Brother is going to teach me the art of poison. When I've mastered it, I'll stand out and shout, I'm Chu Le. I'm Chu Le. Presumably, many people would exclaim on the spot and then kowtow, wow. You're the world's #1 poison expert, super expert. As Chu Le thought, her two big eyes narrowed into crescents. Her rosy lips couldn't help but twitch, and then twitch again. Her small tongue also couldn't help but lick her lips from time to time. She was excited, happy, and exhilarated about the beautiful future she had outlined. But she couldn't sleep. Chu Yang, on the other hand, was wholeheartedly comprehending his new realm, 5th stage sword sovereign. Wei Wuyan's feeling wasn't wrong. In terms of sword cultivation, the 5th stage sword sovereign was the stage of sword cultivation. It was called unsheathing the sword. Unsheathing the sword, but not leaving the sheath. Radiating sharpness and threatening murderous intent. Having just obtained the essence of the sword spirit, one could control the spirit of the sword. This was the 5th stage sword sovereign. They set off at dawn the next day. Chu Yang and Wei Wuyan didn't feel anything. Only the little girl, Chu Le, had 2 panda-like dark circles under her eyes. She kept yawning along the way. That morning, they had already reached the Black Mountain Pass. The Black Mountain Pass was the boundary of the world. It was also the most terrifying area in the whole southeast region. After crossing this Black Mountain Pass, we'll really be out of the southeast region. Wei Wuyan stretched out his hand and pointed forward, his voice solemn. Chu Yang looked at the triangular intersection in front of him. He let out a deep breath and said, our Chu clan is not too remote in the southeast. There is a large area in the southeast of the Chu clan. Further southeast is a desolate and uninhabited place. Now that I think about it, we actually walked nearly 7,000 miles from the Chu clan to the Black Mountain Pass. In other words, the entire southeast was actually more than 20,000 miles in a straight line. What a vast place this is. Wei Wuyan said faintly, and the southeast that you see is not even 1/10 of the entire upper 3 heavens. If it was from the southeast to the southwest, it would probably be 100,000 li. And from the south to the north, it's even farther. Chu Yang gasped. The upper 3 heavens is too big. Compared to the lower 3 heavens and the upper 3 heavens, it's many times bigger. Wei Wuyan chuckled. It's good that the place is big. Heroes were emerging in large numbers, and it was very lively. If he caused trouble, it would be easier for him to hide. That's why the remuneration is so high. Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're only thinking about the remuneration. Wei Wuyan said, but the emergence of the Blood Payers organization has indeed made the upper 3 heavens much quieter. Otherwise, I really don't know how many bandits will appear. Chu Yang said quietly, I don't think so. The emergence of the Blood Payers has made the world more chaotic. Bandits and Blood Payers are mixed together. If they accept missions, they're Blood Payers. If they don't accept missions, they're bandits. In this way, it's even more difficult for the law enforcement officers. Blood Payers are actually law enforcement officers in another sense. They're the kind of people that the law enforcement officers can't deal with easily. And now that they're mixed together, I'm afraid that the law enforcement officers sometimes don't know where to start. Although there are certain benefits, from a certain extent, this is condoning evil. Wei Wuyan was stunned. After a long time, he nodded and said, this makes sense. However, it's also a little one-sided. Chu Yang, do you think that law enforcement officers really enforce the law fairly? There are more than 10 people who wear law enforcement officers' uniforms and commit crimes in this world. Such people are far more abominable than real bandits. Law enforcement officers have long been rotten from the inside. Law enforcement officers have long been rotten from the inside. Chu Yang said softly. His eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking about. So this world is becoming more and more chaotic, Wei Wuyan said. So no matter what, this world is chaotic, Chu Yang said quietly. It's precisely because the world is chaotic that we need to have strength. Wei Wuyan's ordinary face had a kind of clear radiance. Chu Yang, in the upper three heavens there are many martial artists. There are more experts, and there are more geniuses than experts. Every moment, there are geniuses falling. Chu Yang listened quietly. He knew that this was Wei Wuyan's lament. And the lament of people like Wei Wuyan was often the most valuable experience in the martial world. The big clans monopolize all resources. So, the world is dominated by the big clans. But no matter when, as long as the big clans exist, there will definitely be resistance. Because of the resistance, the big clans become more and more domineering. So, there are more and more people who resist. But big clans are big clans. They have a deep foundation, and they have many talented people. There was a period of time when they even monopolized the word. The Shao clan established the frightening Dragon Martial Arts Academy and recruited poor disciples. But after they finished their studies, they all became the Shao clan's slaves. Those from the frightening Dragon Martial Arts Academy became hired thugs, and those from the frightening Dragon Martial Arts Academy became accountants, shopkeepers, and waiters. It's impossible for them to be above the Shao clan's relatives in their whole lives. The other big clans also used the same method to recruit talents. Outside, there are many people who practice martial arts but are illiterate. Wei Wuyan sighed. What does martial arts comprehension rely on? Even if you're smart and a genius, if you're illiterate and don't know any principles, how can you comprehend the heavenly way of martial arts? That's simply a joke. So, the rule of the big clans is still considered impregnable for the past 10,000 years. Although the big clans are strong, the upper three heavens is too big. After all, there are only a small number of people in the big clans. Although they can rule, slowly they can't monopolize it completely. So, from 8,000 years ago, there were constant battles and fights. Now, actually, every year that passes, the battles will escalate and become more and more intense. But the big clans can completely suppress them every time. But with the passage of time, there are also experts and gangs among the idle people of the martial world. So, the whole continent is in chaos. We're that group of people. Wei Wuyan said, the reason why we're able to pass down our heritage, develop our cultivation, and still survive, is not because the big clans are soft-hearted, but because, what you said just now, the upper three heavens is too big. Chu Yang was silent. Wei Wuyan said, do you know that the sentence, the upper three heavens is too big, that you said just now is really enough for people to experience for thousands of years? It's full of helplessness and blood. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, even if we're helpless, we still have to continue living. Wei Wuyan smiled bitterly. You're right. He said sadly, now the upper three heavens is desperate for resources. There's no such thing as benevolence, righteousness, and morality. Everything depends on strength. And as long as we pass through this mountain pass, we'll enter a chaotic world. A truly terrifying chaotic world. Chaotic world. Chu Yang frowned and asked. Yes, chaotic world. Ahead is the Black Blood Forest in the southeast. Wei Wuyan pointed and said, outside the mountain pass, the Black Blood Forest is all within a radius of more than 3,000 miles. It's an unregulated area. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of air. A radius of 3,000 miles. 3,000 miles doesn't seem to be very big, but it's clear after careful calculation. In our words, it's 1.77 million square kilometers. P.S. Some readers always feel that the world is small, so I'll explain it here. This place is equivalent to 1/5 of a country. It's not small. What a vast area this is. This place is bordered by a few big clans, but each clan doesn't dare to have the final say. They also don't dare to go deep into the Black Blood Forest. This place is known as the Forbidden Area of the Southeast Law Enforcement Officers. In this area, the Shao clan is in contact with the southeast, the Zhuge clan and the Lan clan are in contact with the south, and the Yi clan is in contact with the south. It's precisely because these four clans are in contact with each other that they don't care. This place has become a complete chaotic world. In this area, who knows how many bandits, robbers, and all kinds of shady businesses exist. And among these, no one can tell which one belongs to the Shao clan, the Zhuge clan, the Lan clan, or the Yi clan. Wei Wuyan said, "So, before entering this place, you have to be mentally prepared." He said heavily, "Be prepared to kill any time. Or be killed." In such a place, even big clans and law enforcement officers don't have much face. Chu Yang's eyes revealed a sharp light. "So, I can kill people here as I wish?" "Yes. As long as you have the ability." Wei Wuyan said, "But you have to take note that the people here are the hardest to kill. Because you don't know that a person you kill casually may have a huge force behind him. So, once you kill someone here, you have to kill them cleanly. Otherwise, you'd rather not kill them. Let them go and wait for the next chance. And there are many experts here. As far as I know, there are many leaders whose cultivations are not inferior to mine. And in this entire Black Blood Forest, there's also a person who is known as the Absolute King. This person occupies the entire Black Blood Forest and is mysterious and unpredictable. For so many years, no one knows his identity, but we only know that he's extremely powerful." Wei Wuyan's voice was very cautious and serious. There was even a strong sense of fear. Chapter 894. "I see." Chu Yang nodded as he pondered. He secretly remembered this matter. How could Wei Wuyan be so fearful without even meeting him be a small matter? After thinking for a while, Chu Yang said, "Old Wei, I remember that your nest is also here." Wei Wuyan smiled bitterly. "Yes, I've placed my teacher on one of the mountains here. In order to avoid trouble, I've been coming and going quietly. I've never come into contact with the people here. They don't know who I am, and I'm also not interested in knowing who they are." Chu Yang nodded slowly and said, "If there's any change or danger, take good care of Le. Don't worry about me." Wei Wuyan nodded. "Don't worry. If that mysterious king doesn't appear, I'm confident that I can protect all of you and get out of here." Chu Yang frowned and said, "Old Wei, don't fight unless there's no other choice. Let me get a feel of the situation first." Wei Wuyan was startled. Then he understood immediately and said, "You want to train yourself. This is a suitable place. Don't worry about anything. Kill as much as you can." This place was the most natural training ground for life and death because there were all kinds of opponents in the Black Blood Forest. There were all kinds of strange weapons, strange cultivation techniques, and even many cultivation techniques that had been lost in history. However, they would suddenly appear here. Moreover, everyone fights with life and death as the result. It's incomparably powerful in terms of battle experience and tempering of the divine spirit. Chu Yang nodded. He completely understood what Wei Wuyan said. Battle experience was, in fact, only useful in terms of life and death experience. Ordinary daily sparring could only be said to be training the body, nothing more. If one couldn't even feel the killing intent, what was the point of training? As for tempering the divine spirit, it was even more reasonable. After all, this was the other party's home ground. If one fought here, one would have to be tense at all times. He didn't dare to relax at all. Over time, it would be of great benefit to his mental endurance and the condensation of his divine spirit. Ever since Chu Yang got the first fragment of the Tribulation Sword's master's divine spirit, although he had completely digested it, he was still a long way away from condensing it and completely integrating it with his divine spirit. Since this place was so dangerous, he could make use of this opportunity to temper himself. In this way, as long as he made a breakthrough in his cultivation and his spirit became more condensed, he would have more confidence in participating in the medicine banquet and the Tianding Grand Meeting. Wei Wuyan had been carefully observing Chu Li's expression. When he saw that Chu Li had changed from contemplation to determination, he knew that Chu Li had made up his mind. Hence, he stopped persuading Chu Li and only reminded him, the most powerful pressure can produce the most powerful motivation. It can also make the most incredible breakthrough. If you can fight your way out of the black blood forest, it shouldn't be a problem for you to raise your cultivation by a few more levels. However, you have to be careful. Although your cultivation is not weak, there are many experts here. Who knows how many of them are stronger than you? If you are in danger, don't try to be brave. If I can't save you in time, then everything will be bad. Chu Yang looked deeply at the dark mountain pass in the distance. He slowly nodded and said, I know. This place is dangerous. For ordinary people, the mere mention of it makes their faces pale. But for martial arts fanatics, it's a treasured place to gain experience. Every year, there would be young disciples from the various large clans who would come to this place to gain experience and increase their strength. However, they usually didn't dare to go too deep. Usually, they would only walk for a few hundred miles before retreating. Actually, this place isn't just a dangerous place. Wei Wuyan turned his head and looked at Chu Li meaningfully. He said, Brother Chu, do you know that there are 3 treasures in the southeast region? Boneless fish in 10,000-mile waves, blooming and withering flowers in thousand-year fog, and black blood vines in the black blood forest. You're saying that there are black blood vines here? Chu Yang suddenly turned around. Wei Wuyan said, yes. And it's black blood poisonous core vine. There are thousands of poisons on it and mysterious bone-destroying water on it. However, these 2 things are at the center of the black blood forest. And it's very hard to find. Chu Yang automatically ignored Wei Wuyan's last 2 sentences. He said excitedly, there's actually black blood poisonous core vine and mysterious bone-destroying water here. This black blood forest is really a good place. Wei Wuyan was speechless. I've said it clearly. It's at the center of the black blood forest, and there are many experts there. That mysterious king of the black blood forest is there. And you're still so excited? Chu Yang couldn't help but be excited. Although the black blood poisonous core vine had a scary name, it wasn't poisonous in itself. The heart juice of the black blood poisonous core vine was an even better treasure. It was something like bone marrow. Once it was refined, it would be the source of thousands of poisons. Although the source wasn't poisonous, if it was given to Chu Li, her cultivation of poison techniques would be smooth sailing. With the help of great poisons to temper her body, the help of the poisonous core of the human-face spider, and the inner core of the poisonous flood dragon, she would be able to produce thousands of poisons automatically. With the heart juice of the black blood poisonous core vine, Chu Li's poison techniques would be like having the source of thousands of poisons. It was equivalent to reaching a higher level. How could Chu Yang not be happy? Mysterious bone-destroying water was an accompanying substance of the black blood poisonous core vine. Only places with mysterious bone-destroying water could the black blood poisonous core vine grow. Both were indispensable. And this mysterious bone-destroying water was even more nourishing for women who cultivated the cold aura. It was said that it could completely incinerate the meridians that weren't suitable for cultivation and reshape them. This was equivalent to a complete rebirth. To the current Chu Li, each of these 2 items was a great fortune that she could only dream of. And to Chu Yang, these 2 items were also infinitely useful. These were all good things that could be used to make heavy pills. In the tribulation space, although the sword spirit was still weak, he couldn't wait to express his desire. You must get them. You must get them. The sword spirit was roaring somewhat ferociously and jumping up and down in the tribulation space. He couldn't wait to come out and take over Chu Yang's body and kill his way into the black blood forest to obtain the black blood poisonous core vine and mysterious bone-destroying water. The more the better. The more the better. The sword spirit gritted his teeth. Chu Yang originally wanted to just pass through the black blood forest, but when he heard that there were such treasures here, how could he still take another step forward? At the same time, he had a strange plan in his heart. I heard from Wei Wuyan that the people here are all enemies of the big clans. At the very least, they are rebels. If I can get some help from here. If Wei Wuyan knew that Chu Yang actually had this idea now, he would definitely fall down from his horse's back. These people are all extremely vicious and have been entrenched here for countless years. You actually want to get them as your subordinates? They'll eat you alive. Let's go down quickly. Chu Yang laughed. You have to be careful. All treasures aren't easy to get. Wei Wuyan reminded him. Not only are there accompanying ferocious beasts, but that mysterious king also stays here for a long time. Who knows why? You have to be careful about this. Although treasures are good, you have to act according to your capabilities. It's only a treasure if you're alive to enjoy it. If you're not alive to enjoy it, it's just a trap. Chu Yang smiled lightly. Sometimes, it has to be in life. No matter whether it's in life or not, you have to try before you know. Who would be willing to take a detour directly? Wei Wuyan sighed. He regretted telling Chu Yang that there was a black blood poisonous core vine here. It was only when he heard Chu Yang and Chu Lu talking about poison that he remembered that there was such a thing here. Therefore, he blurted it out without thinking. He didn't expect Chu Yang to be so eager and daring. Looking at the black blood forest in the distance now, that dense black fog and that pitch-black color, Wei Wuyan suddenly felt that it was like an ancient giant beast with its mouth wide open, waiting for the three of them to jump in so that it could chew them into powder. The three of them looked at the Black Mountain Pass from afar and heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. Then, they waved their horse whips and rushed down, leaving behind a trail of smoke and dust. The Black Mountain Pass was indeed the Black Mountain Pass. Even the rocks on both sides of the mountain were black. The three of them rode past the Black Mountain Pass like a gust of wind and entered the vast area in front. This was also the chaotic world that Wei Wuyan mentioned. This was a boundless forest. Moreover, the trees on both sides were tall and thick. No one knew how old they were, but regardless of whether it was the trunks or the branches, they were all pitch black in color. Even the ground under their feet was pitch black. Even though it was daytime, there was still a dark fog floating in the air. An indescribable gloomy atmosphere arose spontaneously. As the three of them went deeper into this area, this atmosphere became more and more intense. Faintly, a kind of terrifying feeling naturally pervaded the air. It seemed to be full of oppression and blood. Even the sky above seemed to be forever shrouded by a gloomy fog. One couldn't see the blue sky and the sun, and there was a faint murderous intent. The three of them didn't stop at all. They spurred their horses and rushed into the first dense forest. The crisp and rapid sound of horse hooves woke up the silence of the black blood forest. A chaotic sound of birds chirping could be heard. Countless birds of all shapes and sizes flew up from the tree branches and hovered in the air, as if condemning these intruders who had intruded into their territory. Even these birds were all pitch black all over. Looking up, one could only see cold and gloomy gazes. The eyes of these big birds were actually flickering faintly and viciously like the wisps. Chu Yang suddenly discovered a strange thing. After entering this vast area, it seemed that his divine senses and senses of aura had lost their function. It was as if he had entered an undetectable ghost territory that blocked off all auras of living things. Other than faintly feeling that the surroundings were full of malicious gazes, he actually couldn't detect any aura of enemies. Chu Yang was stunned. He reined in the horse and stopped. There's something wrong with this place. Wei Wuyan seemed to have seen through his doubts. He smiled bitterly and said, "This kind of place is like this. Ever since that powerful person folded the heavens, the border areas of the various big clans, which are actually the original folding points, seem to have been placed with restrictions. Even supreme martial artists, if they are below the 5th grade, can't use their divine senses and aura here. Only those who have reached the level of a supreme martial artist and above can use their divine senses to break through such restrictions and achieve the effect of unimpeded movement. Supreme martial artist of the 5th grade." Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. These 4 words reminded him of an extremely important matter. This matter made Chu Yang's expression change completely. Chapter 895. From the divine soul of the first tribulation sword master, Chu Yang knew that there was an obvious boundary between the supreme martial artist level, and this boundary was called the boundary between immortals and mortals. Below this boundary were mortals, above this boundary were immortals. And this boundary was supreme martial artist level. And now, the boundary of this restriction in the Black Blood Forest was actually also supreme martial artist level. How could there be such a coincidence? If it wasn't a coincidence but a deliberate arrangement, then why? The more Chu Yang came into contact with these secrets, the more he felt that the heavens were really full of layers of unsolvable fog. And behind these layers of fog, there was only one truth. Other than that powerful person who could fold the heavens, no one could find out this truth in these thousands of years. Chu Yang muttered, "Intermediate supreme martial artist, it actually requires an intermediate supreme martial artist." Wei Wuyan didn't notice his expression. He sighed and said, "That's right. Only an intermediate supreme martial artist can break through this restriction, and it's only limited to himself. Although the heavens is extremely vast, how many supreme martial artists above 5th grade have there been since ancient times? Moreover, why would an expert with such a cultivation level have any interest in the Black Blood Forest? Not to mention coming here specifically to break through the restriction. That's pure nonsense." Chu Yang thought for a while and couldn't help but laugh. Which powerful person would be so free as to come here specifically to test whether his divine soul power could break through this worthless restriction? Wei Wuyan said, "So, this is also the reason why this place can exist until now. Otherwise, this Black Blood Forest would have been swept by the big clans long ago. In the whole continent, there are more than 10 such places, and they form a circle around the whole upper 3 heavens, with the Yi clan in the center. There's actually such a strange place in the world." Chu Yang frowned. Wei Wuyan smiled lightly, and there was some mockery on his ordinary face. "Yes, because of the restriction of divine senses, the people in this place are all extremely daring. No matter who they're facing, they dare to draw their swords brazenly. Because they don't know and can't tell whether the person they're facing is a martial artist or a 5th grade supreme martial artist." Chu Yang smiled. "Fight blindly? If a supreme martial artist really comes in, then wouldn't it be like a group of ants surrounding a group of elephants and attacking recklessly? And they're actually full of confidence to win? How ironic." Wei Wuyan couldn't help but laugh. "That's right." At this moment, before Wei Wuyan could finish his sentence, a strange voice that sounded like a crow's caw could be heard. This voice was sometimes far and sometimes close. It was strange and eerie. Along with this voice, the surroundings seemed to be filled with eerie ghostly aura. The laughter was still echoing, and it was getting worse and worse. The 3 of them pretended not to hear him and continued on their way. Regardless of whether it was Chu Yang's composure or Wei Wuyan's cultivation, they didn't take such a small trick to heart. That gloomy voice finally sounded, carrying an indescribable sense of mockery and ridicule as it said in a strange tone, "Oh my, where did this friend come from? How awe-inspiring! How daring!" He actually galloped in the Black Blood Forest without any restraint. Isn't he looking down on the fellow cultivators in the Black Blood Forest? Following this voice, a wave of mocking laughter rang out in front of them. From the looks of it, they look like a few fledglings. Fledgling? Old third he, don't tell me you want to eat meat again? Heh, don't blame me for being greedy. These 3 pigs really look appetizing. Other than that rigid face, that young one and that little girl are all pink and tender. I'm drooling just looking at them. That rigid face must also be very chewy. Old third he, you eat human flesh to replenish your energy. This time, you must be able to replenish your energy again. I hope I can eat them for a few more days. Slurp. This person seemed to be drooling as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. I've been craving for them for a long time. I haven't seen such tender fat sheep for a long time. Just looking at them makes me feel that they're so delicious. I can't take it anymore, I'm drooling. A wave of weird laughter. Chu Yang raised his eyebrows and shouted, "What old third he? Whether you're a human or a ghost, show yourself to me." When he first heard Wei Wuyan's introduction, Chu Yang thought that there must be a few good men in this lawless area. He even had the intention of recruiting them. But at this moment, ever since he heard the words look appetizing, little girl is all pink and tender, the king of Hell Chu suddenly had a murderous intent in his heart. Sucking the blood essence of martial artists for one's own cultivation was an extremely evil method of cultivation. This cultivation method was very fast. He basically didn't need to cultivate. He only needed to know how to operate the cultivation method and then catch a living person to suck their blood essence. After that, he would be able to extract 1/10 of this person's cultivation as his own strength. But there was a restriction here, and that was, the person who was sucked must be a living person. Often, after a person's blood essence had been sucked out, he wouldn't die immediately. That kind of scene was really tragic. This kind of cultivation method was cruel and inhumane. It had always been forbidden. He didn't expect that it would be so brazen in this place. This kind of person really couldn't be considered a human. Since this is the case, I have to train anyway. Let this king of hell start from here and kill my way to the heavens. With this shout, the movement in front suddenly disappeared. Immediately after, there was another commotion. That eccentric voice sounded even more arrogantly. Scared me to death, scared me to death. It's actually a young master, Old third he. It seems that you're going to worship him as your godfather. You still want to eat meat, huh? Isn't that the same as eating your own father? With this angry shout, a few figures suddenly appeared in front. The person in front had a face like the bottom of a pot. His nostrils were facing the sky, and his ears were protruding. His hair was sparse, and one couldn't tell how old he was. He grinned hideously and said, "Who's the young master that spoke just now? Come out and let me have a look." Chu Yang's eyes were cold as he looked at these people in front of him. In the gloomy forest, there were many people hiding in the shadows, paying attention to the movements here. 5 people came out in front of him. If these 5 people didn't come out, it would be really hard to discover them. That was because they were all dressed in black. Even their skin was black. Even their eyeballs were almost completely white. Only when they moved would a trace of white appear in their eyeballs. Chu Yang looked over. Just as Wei Win said, he couldn't see the cultivation of the people in front of him. Among the 5 people, the one who spoke just now must be that old third he. Another one was thin and withered. He didn't weigh more than 25 kilograms. He squatted there like a big monkey. His mouth was sharp and his cheeks were like that of a monkey. He looked at Chu Yang with his eyes shining with a vicious light. Another one was fat and big. He was fat all over and had a hideous face. Another one was thin and tall, like a hemp stick. His head was actually sharp, like the tip of a spear. There wasn't a single hair on his sharp head. It was black and glossy, and there was only a circle of fine hair around his ears. The last one had his back facing Chu Yang and the others, so they couldn't see clearly what he looked like. At this time, that old third he laughed hideously again. He stretched out his blood-red tongue and licked his lips. He looked at Chu Lur greedily and sucked another mouthful of saliva. Then he laughed weirdly and said, "Where's that young master who spoke just now? Your old third he is here. Why aren't you coming out to accept my worship?" Wei Wuyan frowned. For this person to speak like this, he already didn't put his own ancestors in his eyes, not to mention loyalty, filial piety, and righteousness. He really had no sense of shame at all. Chu Yang sneered and took a step forward. He said, "Your old third he? I'm the one who spoke just now. However, with your unloved and unloved appearance, if I really have a grandson like you, I'll really jump out from my coffin even if I die." Old third he looked at him sinisterly with his pitch-black eyes. "Young master, since you don't like me, why don't you let me eat you? It'll also be a good thing for you, huh? Look at your tender appearance. You're still a virgin, right? You still have to torment yourself on a woman for a long time before you can give birth to a baby, right? Do you know how to torment yourself, huh?" Chu Yang smiled slightly. "It doesn't matter how I torment myself, but I pity your parents. After tormenting themselves for such a long time, they gave birth to a super bastard like you. It's also a kind of tragedy. I'm just curious about one thing." Old third he's eyes flickered viciously. He actually tilted his head and made a curious look. What's the matter? I'm just curious why your mother didn't strangle you to death the moment she gave birth to you. Chu Yang curled his lips. You should look better when you're reborn. Old Third He's face turned ugly. Young master, I originally wanted to talk to you for fun, but you actually dared to speak rudely. Chu Yang was unmoved. He said, actually, I'm also sad for your father. Even if I let you stay like that, it's still much better than coming out to disgust people, right? Laughter sounded all around. Even those who were on the same side as Old Third, he actually started to mock him mercilessly. Chu Yang's heart flashed. These people don't have any sense of camaraderie at all. Old Third He roared, but the next moment, a ghastly sword light had already arrived in front of him. Chu Yang had already scolded enough. Why would he continue to talk to such trash? He would kill him first. But he didn't use his full strength for this sword. Killing people wasn't important. What was important was the experience gained during the battle. Besides, the opponent's strength was unknown. If he used his full strength rashly, once he was hit by a strong counterattack, he would definitely be exposed. At that time, if Old Third He's cultivation was high, even Wei Wuyan might not be able to intervene in time to save him. The sword was like a shooting star. Old Third He roared. He suddenly turned his body, tilted his head and dodged the sword. A few strands of sparse hair fell lightly. Old Third He was flustered and exasperated. So small. If I don't eat you alive today. Before he finished his sentence, Chu Yang's sword had already arrived in front of him again. Chapter 896. Old Third He shook his arms and saw-toothed discs appeared in each of his hands. Once he made his move, the discs flew up with loud noises. They turned into two streaks of black light in the air. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. When he made contact with Old Third He just now, Chu Yang realized that this Old Third He's cultivation was extremely impure and chaotic. It seemed that this was the disadvantage of swallowing other people's blood essence, and this Old Third He was obviously only a 4th or 5th stage martial emperor. With Chu Yang's cultivation he could totally crush him to death. Presumably, this was only the outermost area of the Black Blood Forest and there weren't many experts here. Chu Yang's heart was set. But Old Third He's weapon was extremely rare. The way to use such a weapon was also very unorthodox and extremely lethal. So Chu Yang simply suppressed the killing intent in his heart and started to fight with him. Sabers and swords were the ancestors of weapons. Any weapon, no matter how it changed, had something in common with the way of the sword. Old Third He's two saw-toothed discs slashed horizontally and directly after he made his move. And every time he made his move, there would be a change of turning. No matter if he hit the enemy's weapon or missed, he would always turn his hand back. This made Chu Yang think of a unique killer move of the way of the sword control technique. He used the fleeting snow cloud steps and the nether phantom steps that came from the first-generation Calamity Swordmaster. His figure floated and blurred as he engaged in a fierce battle with Old Third He. At first glance, it seemed that they were evenly matched. But Wei Wuyan, who was watching from the side, already revealed a relieved smile. Up till now, Chu Yang's sword was like the spring breeze, like a dancing willow, ever-changing. He didn't use the Calamity Sword technique at all. He didn't even use the sword moves that he created himself. He only used very ordinary sword moves like poking, stabbing, slashing. He used all means to interfere with the other party's moves and at the same time figure out how to use the other party's vital chi in different situations. The more Old Third He fought, the more ferocious his expression became. He suddenly roared and threw out two discs. Then, he shook his hands and two more saw-toothed discs flew out. The moment he shook his hand, Chu Yang suddenly understood one thing. It turned out that in addition to the circulation of the yuan qi in the body, it also required the wonderful vibration of the wrist. At the moment of the attack, the internal and external forces would circulate simultaneously and form a kind of attractive and circulating aura around the body. The sawtooth disc would naturally come out and return and come back again. The cycle would repeat endlessly. Chu Yang let out a long laugh. Die. His eyes were cold, and his long sword suddenly emitted a dazzling brilliance. With a few popping sounds, the 4 discs flew out in all directions. Surprisingly, they did not return. Old Third He was astonished. He hurriedly retreated and shouted, "How do you know my?" Since Chu Yang had understood the mystery of his circulation of power, he naturally cut off his circulation with his sword. So, how could he allow him to say anything at this moment? With a flash of sword light, it was more than twice as fast as before. Before Old Third He could finish his words, he already felt a chill in his chest. A gust of sword energy had already rushed into his body and pierced his heart. With a popping sound, all his internal organs shattered at the same time. A big bloody hole appeared in front of his chest. Old Third He's body did not fall. He looked at Chu Yang strangely and actually laughed. "You dare to kill me? Ha! My teacher will not let you off," Chu Yang snorted disdainfully. With a flying kick, he sent this infinitely disgusting body flying into the air and breaking it into pieces. Only a head flew far away with the sound of the wind. It flew into the dense forest and disappeared. Even though it had already become a corpse, Chu Yang did not want to see this disgusting face again. So, he sent it flying with a kick. However, Chu Yang's method was undoubtedly very cruel. Especially the last kick, which sent the head flying away, made one's hair stand on end. The sound of the corpse falling to the ground was heard. The scene was silent. No one spoke. Chu Er screamed. She was so scared that her face turned pale. Wei Wuyan took a step forward and wanted to cover her eyes. "Don't cover up. Let her watch." Chu Yang's cold shout came from the field. Wei Wuyan stopped in his tracks. Chu Lu's 2 big eyes looked at the broken body parts on the ground. She was full of fear and her body trembled. Chu Yang did not turn around. "Don't forget your path. Since you've chosen that path, whatever kind of scene you're going to face in your life will not be cut off. If you're scared, change your mind as soon as possible. If you don't regret, then from now on, you have to face the fall of your life by yourself. Face the despair of life and feel the aura of death. Because you'll have to do these things by yourself in the future." Chu Yang said coldly, "If you don't dare to look, then tell me that you regret it." Wei Wuyan stomped his feet and said with some pity, "She's still a child and a girl." Chu Yang's expression did not change. He said coldly, "But her enemies will not let her off just because she's a child or a girl. On the contrary, if she can't accept it now, she'll have to accept it in the future." Wei Wuyan was speechless. "I don't regret it," Chu Er said with a trembling voice. She tried her best to open her eyes wide and look at this hell-like scene. Her face was pale and she was on the verge of collapsing. Chu Yang's face was cold and hard, as if he had no pity for his sister at all. Wei Wuyan sighed in his heart. Chu Yang may seem ruthless now, but he's really responsible for his sister. Just like what Chu Yang said, Chu Lu had already chosen her own path. Then she would have to face all these sooner or later. Timidity was a kind of mentality that could be fatal at any time. Since Chu Lu had decided on her own path, then from this moment on, Chu Yang would use all methods and means to grind away his sister's weakness, timidity, hesitation, fear, and so on, all the mentality that could hurt her in the future. "You actually killed Old Third He." That skinny and shriveled guy who was like a baboon screamed. Once he spoke, Chu Yang immediately recognized him. This person was the one who let out a strange laugh when they just came in. "Not only do I want to kill Old Third He, I don't intend to let the few of you off either." Chu Yang said coldly, "Come. Hand over your heads." That skinny and shriveled guy's eyes flickered and he suddenly roared, "Everyone, attack together." The 4 of them jumped up at the same time. Chu Yang looked around and his heart couldn't help but settle down. Among the 4 of them, 2 used swords and 1 used a pair of hooks. With a strange curved arc, they flickered with cold light. What surprised Chu Yang the most was the fattest guy. This guy had the largest build, but the weapons he used were 2 long needles. They were half a foot long and as thick as chopsticks. Both ends were sharp and round in the middle. As he spun them in his hands, balls of light actually spun out and spread out in circles. Chu Yang was very interested. But the 4 of them had already pounced on him. For a moment, the 4 of them used 3 kinds of weapons and fiercely greeted Chu Yang at the same time. Chu exclaimed. Wei Wuyan comforted her. It's okay, just watch. He paused for a while and said, in the future, when you start to cultivate, you will see such scenes every day. Your family and friends fighting in front of you and falling into a dangerous or hopeless situation. Such things are really too common. You have to learn to accept it. Otherwise, you won't be able to embark on that path in the end. Chu pursed her lips. She was so worried that her little heart shrank into a ball. She said in a trembling voice, but this is my big brother. Wei Wuyan sighed and thought to himself, why must I not worry about my big brother? This is really a little hard to say. Turning his head to look at the scene, his eyes suddenly lit up. The sword in Chu Yang's hand became as soft as water. The sword in the east and the sword in the west seemed to be slashing against the resistance of the water flow underwater. There was an obvious feeling of sluggishness. But it was this kind of soft move that blocked the attacks of the four enemies. It was impenetrable. Moreover, that kind of strange sword momentum seemed to be driving something, which affected the attacks of the four enemies. And this effect seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. It was as if the undercurrent of the water was slowly surging. Slowly, it would set off a whirlpool, which would drive the water flow to change its direction and strength. Wei Wuyan had never seen such a sword technique before. He couldn't help but stare at it in a daze for a while. He instinctively felt that Chu Yang's sword technique contained a kind of strange understanding. And this kind of understanding would be of great use to him. Wei Wuyan's face was solemn. He increasingly felt that there were really endless secrets on Chu Yang's body. That day, when he killed those 3 people, the sword techniques he used were fierce and domineering. It wasn't difficult for him to kill people above his level. Moreover, he had never seen such swordsmanship before. But he had a feeling that under such fierce sword techniques, as long as one's cultivation was enough, even the sky could be split into 2. Wei Wuyan wasn't a descendant of a big clan, but a disciple of an itinerant cultivator. Although he knew about the legend of the Tribulation Sword Master, he definitely didn't know about the Tribulation Sword technique. This was also the reason why Chu Yang dared to use the Tribulation Sword technique that day, even though he knew that Wei Wuyan was watching from the side. Now, the sword technique that Chu Yang used to deal with the siege wasn't actually a sword technique, but a sword intent. The power of soft water. Chu Yang comprehended the power of sword techniques in the lower 3 heavens. During this period of time, he hadn't given up on studying it. Finally, today, after his sword techniques had broken through to the 5th stage of Sword Sovereign, he could easily use this set of soft water sword intent. This time, Chu Yang settled down to practice and supplement his sword intent. Currently, there were 2 weapons that he could use as a reference. Needle. Double hook and double needle were completely different from using a sword. In fact, they were completely opposite. When the needle danced on the palm, it was needless to say that the force used was small and delicate. On the other hand, the hook was similar to a saber, but the force used was completely opposite. Hooks were used to pull inwards, fling outwards, swipe upwards and pull downwards. These kinds of forces were completely different from using a sword or a saber. But Chu Yang just had to discover the shortcomings of his sword intent from these 2 strange weapons. If hooks could be used, why couldn't swords be used? Hooks were originally evolved from sabers, and sabers and swords were inseparable. Since hooks could be used, then swords could be used too. Chu Yang sensitively realized that although the opponent's strength wasn't very high, as long as he comprehended this layer of sword principles, his sword technique's cultivation would definitely improve by another level immediately. Chapter 897. As Chu Yang talked about the battle, his own understanding also increased. Only then did he realize that his soft water sword intent was definitely not to be underestimated. As the sword momentum unfolded, it actually became more and more powerful. Especially during the battle, as the enemy's energy slowly became more and more skillful. Originally, he used this soft water sword intent because he had absolute confidence that he wouldn't be injured and was also worried that the Tribulation Sword technique would be recognized. At the beginning, it was very embarrassing for a while. But as the sword momentum unfolded, Chu Yang became more and more at ease. especially when the first gentle sword energy surged out in an arc like an undercurrent in deep water. Chu Yang's heart was suddenly enlightened. This sword intent was comprehended in water. In water, one was completely surrounded by water, just like how he was surrounded by enemies now. It was the same. In such a situation, it was impossible to use violence to break out of the encirclement or win. The only thing he could do was to use the power of the water flow and use his own strength to guide it. Let the enemy's energy move in the direction of his sword intent, and naturally he wouldn't be hurt. Chu Yang unfolded his long sword very carefully. Surrounded by the four people, it was like duckweed drifting with the waves. It floated in the storm and rose and fell on the tip of the storm. But no matter how big the storm was, this duckweed wasn't hurt at all. His movements were light, and his sword momentum was slow and gentle. But every time he swung his sword, it would inevitably form a gentle and soft force, cleverly diverting the energy of the enemy's attack to one side. At the beginning of the battle, there were still collisions between weapons, and clanging sounds were incessant. But as the battle became more and more intense, the sounds of weapons colliding actually gradually decreased. In the end, it completely disappeared. Until the end, a strange phenomenon appeared in the battle. Chu Yang lightly pointed his sword to the left. There was clearly a shining weapon in front of him that was about to pierce his body. But he didn't know why that weapon involuntarily changed its direction when he pointed the tip of his sword, and pointed to the left at the same time. Chu Yang pointed his sword to the right. So the four people, with flushed faces, tried their best to control their weapons. But they still couldn't stop themselves from pointing to the right again. Their movements were uniform. It was as if the five of them were performing a group dance. Chu Yang was in the middle, leading the dance. With a swing of his sword and a twist of his buttocks, the four men followed suit and swayed their buttocks. He swung his sword again and shook his buttocks twice. The four men followed suit and shook their buttocks twice. The scene was extremely comical. Chu even laughed as if she was watching a show. This is so fun. What's going on? Why did they all learn from Big Brother? They are fighting a war. How can they fight a war like this? Wei Wuyan's face and eyes were filled with shock. She did not hear Chu Lu at all. Only an innocent little girl like Chu Lu, who knew nothing about martial arts, would find this scene laughable. However, Wei Wuyan only felt a chill down his spine when he saw this. He had seen the battle clearly from the beginning until now. As soon as the other party made a move, Wei Wuyan could tell. These were four emperor-level experts. Moreover, each of them had their own unique techniques. Two of them were second grade and the other two were fourth grade. Logically speaking, with such strength and cooperation, it would not be difficult for Chu Yang, who was only a fifth-grade sword sovereign, to escape. However, if he wanted to win and kill them, he would have to pay a price. This was also the case from the beginning of the battle. Under the siege of the other party, Chu Yang was somewhat overwhelmed. His set of sword techniques did not seem to be able to cope with such a siege. Just as Wei Wuyan was feeling anxious, he saw that Chu Yang's situation had changed after one sword move. Others might not think much of that sword move, but what kind of eyesight did Wei Wuyan have? He could clearly see that the power of that sword move had actually changed the direction of the sword move furthest away from Chu Yang. From this moment onwards, Chu Yang's situation began to improve step by step. It could be seen that when Chu Yang was using this set of sword techniques, he was still very inexperienced and unfamiliar with it. However, in such a life and death battle, Chu Yang was actually very proficient in it. He was able to use it quickly, counterattack quickly, and check quickly. Then, in such a fast speed, he was able to subtly influence the other party's attack. From the initial fluster to the current situation where he was at ease and without any danger, it only took less than 2 hours. There was no need to worry about the current situation at all. Now, the four people were like their feet in the mud. Even if they wanted to escape, it was absolutely impossible. Chu Yang could insert the tip of his sword into the throat of whoever he wanted. This was just a matter of a thought and a turn of the tip of his sword. However, Chu Yang obviously did not want to kill them. But Wei Wuyan frowned as he watched Chu Yang's sword move. The next moment, he finally lost his self-control and opened his mouth wide. He saw Chu Yang's sword move. It was an ordinary sword move, but the tip of the sword was slightly lifted up. However, the four people's weapons involuntarily lifted up fiercely at the same time. In the air of nothingness, he leapt upwards. Looking at Chu Yang's sword, one couldn't see the profoundness of this sword move at all. However, from the reactions of the other party's weapons, one could see that this move of Chu Yang's really went against the common sense of martial arts. This was obviously the move of the person who used the double hooks, raising fire to burning heaven. This was a hook technique, not a sword technique. However, Chu Yang used a sword to do it. Not only did he use it, but he also led the four experts who were about the same level as him to lift up involuntarily at the same time. This time, the chests of the four people were all exposed. The eyes of the four people were already completely filled with despair, because Chu Yang only needed to use a light sword move to cut the four of them in half. Now, the four people were already extremely regretful. Why did we have to provoke this little ancestor for no reason? They were really tired of living. At the very least, when old third he died, everyone could have just dispersed in a hubbub, but they just had to overestimate themselves and want to take revenge. Now, they were directly trapped in the other party's aura. Whatever the other party wanted them to do, they did. If the other party wanted them to raise their heads, they didn't dare to kneel down. If the other party wanted them to castrate themselves, they didn't dare to slit their own throats. Not to mention that their lives and deaths were already in the other party's hands, even their own actions and limbs didn't listen to them anymore. What kind of strange technique was this? How could this be? The four people wanted to cry. However, in the next moment, the four people really started to cry, because their fantasies suddenly became reality in an instant. However, Chu Yang didn't cut them in half. Instead, he let them go. Then, he swung his sword horizontally. The four people involuntarily bent down and pulled their weapons to the side in unison. The person who used the double hooks did so according to the rules, but when the other three did so, it was as if they were fishing in the river, and they were fishing in slow motion. Everyone's faces twitched and they were sweating profusely. Their eyes were full of fear. Chu Yang pointed his sword downwards. The four people chopped their weapons at their own crotches at the same time. For a moment, the four people screamed at the same time. Their facial muscles twitched and tears flowed from their eyes. They were full of fear and resentment. But the weapons in their hands didn't hesitate. They chopped fiercely at their own crotches. It was like the last curtain call of a group dance. It was the kind of neat and well-trained. With a smacking sound, blood spurted out. For lumps of excrescence fell from the crotches of the four people like ripe persimmons. The four people followed with the same action. Their weapons were still in the posture of stabbing downwards. Their bodies were slightly bent, and their butts were slightly raised. Then, they suddenly raised their heads, opened their mouths, and screamed at the sky. The one who used the sword was better. With a slash of his sword, his manhood fell down neatly. However, the one who used the double hooks and long needles almost tore off their own crotches. What kind of pain was this? No wonder their voices were so loud and clear. They were so high-spirited. Their expressions were also so twisted. Just like what they had imagined just now, they were indeed commanded by the other party in such an unimaginable way. They castrated themselves. Then, Chu Yang did another action. He chuckled and stretched out his palm. With a flick of his little finger, a sword actually began to spin in circles in his palm. In an instant, a large halo of light had already appeared. The sword light crisscrossed and the halo slowly dispersed, causing people to feel a chill all over their bodies. The fatty who used the long needles couldn't help but be dumbfounded, even though he was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Isn't this how I use the long needles? Why is he using the long sword like this? Then, Chu Yang shouted, "Kill! Tonic!" The four people shouted and begged for mercy. In their panic, they actually shouted, "Don't," as tonic, in unison. Hearing this, Chu Yang was stunned for a moment. He thought, is this a unique dialect here? Just as this thought flashed through his mind, the rotating long sword in his palm had already stabbed and retracted quickly. It stabbed and retracted again. It was exactly the same as how the fatty used the long needles to attack. Puff, 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 puff. The four people raised their necks and screamed miserably. This posture was really too convenient. The voices of the four people stopped abruptly. A small red dot appeared on everyone's neck, as if they were pricked by a needle. The four people looked at him in a daze. Their eyes slowly turned gray. With a few clangs, the weapons in their hands fell to the ground. Then they slowly fell to the ground. They lost their breath. Chu Yang turned the long sword into a pinwheel in his hand. He stood with the sword in his hand and turned his head to look at the shadows around him. Rustling sounds could be heard from the shadows. The people who were originally hiding in the forest disappeared one by one. Under such unimaginable swordsmanship, these people who originally didn't dare to show their faces didn't dare to stay here at this moment. Wei Wuyan strode forward and looked at Chu Yang in shock and disbelief. You're actually learning the other party's martial techniques while fighting? Wei Wuyan's voice sounded as if he had seen a demon. Chu Yang said in astonishment, "Yes, what's wrong with that?" Wei Wuyan was speechless. Looking at the innocent expression on this guy's face, Wei Wuyan almost wanted to strangle him to death. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? How can you say such a thing? Chapter 898. What's wrong with that? Wei Wuyan said speechlessly, "Don't you know that you're simply defying the natural order?" "What do you mean?" Chu Yang frowned. He had always been doing this. He didn't feel that he was defying the natural order at all. Wei Wuyan sighed. "I'm not surprised by your sword moves, nor am I surprised that you can defeat them, nor am I surprised by your fighting style. I'm just talking about the strength of your heart." "The strength of my heart." Chu Yang repeated his words. "Because you weren't single-minded just now. You weren't multitasking." Wei Wuyan said, "You're wholeheartedly fighting and comprehending your swordsmanship at the same time. But at the same time, you're also wholeheartedly learning your opponent's moves." Wei Wuyan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Do you understand what I mean?" Chu Yang was a little puzzled. "Isn't this multitasking? What's wrong with that?" "That's what I was doing just now." Wei Wuyan said frantically, "How is this multitasking?" "This isn't multitasking. This is multitasking." Chu Yang was stunned. "How can I have so many hearts?" Wei Wuyan turned around and said, "Did you feel very detached just now? Other than that, you couldn't feel anything else at all? These three things were going on in your heart at the same time, without disturbing each other? And did you feel that you made a breakthrough at the same time?" Chu Yang frowned and recalled the mood just now. But he realized that he couldn't enter it. He pondered and said, "Yes, it's like this. This isn't multitasking. This is the Tao state." Wei Wuyan sighed. His eyes were filled with disappointment and envy. The Tao realm is the highest spiritual realm in the process of martial arts cultivation. Once you enter this realm, no matter what kind of martial arts problem you have, you can solve it easily. And this realm can only be encountered by chance. Generally, it can only appear once or twice in a fierce battle where the mind can't be distracted. It's illusory and unpredictable, and there's no certainty. Tao state. Chu Yang pondered and said, "So this is the Tao state." Wei Wuyan said with some regret, "In the battle just now, you really should have dragged on for more time. The longer you stay in that state, the greater your harvest will be. Generally, such a situation would only happen once in 1,000 battles after reaching the saint level. Some Supreme Being experts might not even be able to enter such a Tao realm in their entire lives. You are only an Emperor-level expert, but you were able to enter such a Tao realm and ended the battle so easily. You gave up on such a Tao realm. What a pity." Chu Yang said in annoyance, "I didn't know this before." Wei Wuyan comforted him, "It's already very good. This time, the appearance of the Tao realm allowed you to completely master that strange sword technique of yours. It also allowed you to secretly learn 2 unique skills. With such a harvest, you can be considered to have returned from a rewarding journey." Chu finally ran up to him. "Big brother, you were so impressive just now." The little girl's face was still somewhat pale. It was clear that she hadn't gotten over her fear yet. The first thing she did when she ran over was to pull Chu Yang's sleeve. Chu Yang frowned. He patted her shoulder and didn't say anything. Now, no matter if he comforted her or anything else, it wouldn't do Chu Lu any good. She had to go through this kind of temperament training by herself. Chu Lu's eyes were a little bitter. Of course, this little girl was looking forward to her brother's comfort. Wei Wuyan couldn't bear to see her like this. He wanted to comfort her, but was stopped by Chu Yang's eyes. "Let's continue forward," said Chu Yang. "Aren't we going to bury these corpses?" Chu Yu asked with some pity. "Someone will bury them for them," said Chu Yang lightly. He looked up at the increasing number of strange black birds in the sky. In the sky, as the smell of blood spread from the ground, the black and ferocious strange birds had already gathered in a dense mass. The three of them hadn't walked far when they heard a cha-cha-cha sound behind them. When she turned back to look, Chu Lu started vomiting on the spot. She finally understood what Chu Yang meant when he said that there would be people who would bury them for them. It turned out that being eaten into a bird's stomach was also called being buried. The strange black birds in the sky swooped down and ferociously pounced on the corpses on the ground. The sound was soft, but it made one's scalp tingle. The corpses of the 5 people, together with their bones and flesh, were reducing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, the ground was completely clean, leaving only a patch of brown ground spots. Even the small pieces of flesh, bones, hair and clothes were all gone. The most terrifying thing was that the skull, which was the hardest part of the human body, was first cut into pieces by the sharp beaks of these strange black birds, and then swallowed into their stomachs. Chu Yang and Wei Wuyan were expressionless. They seemed to have expected this, but also seemed to be used to it. After Chu Lu finished vomiting, she followed the two of them weakly. After walking for dozens of steps, she turned back and saw that the things she vomited were all gone. The 3 of them gradually went deeper into the black blood forest. The deeper they went, the darker it became. It was quiet all around. Even the sound of birds couldn't be heard. Chu Yang suddenly thought of something. He frowned and said, "Brother Wei, the beaks of these birds are very hard." Wei Wuyan said, "Oh?" Chu Yang said seriously, but after they pecked at it, the black ground didn't move at all. Wei Wuyan laughed. "So this is what you're talking about." He suddenly exerted force and stomped down. With a boom, the whole black blood forest seemed to tremble. But the ground under his feet only sank slightly. Do you see it? Because this black blood forest is the original folding point, the soil here is the hardest. It's several times harder than ordinary steel. So, the trees in this black blood forest generally grow very slowly. And their hardness is comparable to steel, or even better. Wei Wuyan split open a small tree that was as thick as the mouth of a bowl. He pointed at the grain and said, "Look." Chu Yang looked over and saw that the grain on the tree was densely packed. He didn't know how many circles there were. A tree like this that is as thick as the mouth of a bowl can only grow for 10 years outside. Trees that grow easily can even grow to this size in 2 years. But in this black blood forest, it needs to grow for at least 500 years. Wei Wuyan said. Chu Yang lightly grunted. He thought to himself, so, the black blood poisonous core vine in here is at least 10,000 years old? If that's really the case, then it's really great. The 3 of them walked all the way in. Chu was weak from vomiting. She walked at the back unsteadily. But not only did Chu Yang not help her, he also didn't let Wei Wuyan help her. Chu frowned stubbornly and walked forward step by step. The little girl felt that her hip bone was sore, and her feet were also burning with pain. Tears welled up in her eyes and she couldn't help but sob. Wei Wuyan sighed. "Let me carry you, okay?" "No," Chu Yang said lightly, "you can't even walk a few steps. How can you talk about breaking through?" Chu Yang's face was cold. Chu tilted her head to one side in a fit of pique. "I can walk by myself." "If you can walk, then walk by yourself," Chu Yang said without any pity. The little girl felt even more wronged. She was so angry that she actually quickened her pace in one go. There was a hint of satisfaction in Chu Yang's eyes. Chu Luer's physical strength had already reached its limit just now. But in a fit of pique, She had unknowingly broken through the limit of her physical strength. But with her physique that had never cultivated before, he couldn't let her continue to break through the next limit. That would seriously damage her body, so when she couldn't take it anymore, he had to carry her on his back. Along the way, there was no obstruction at all. It was as if the previous obstruction didn't happen at all. After walking slowly for more than 10 miles, there were movements in front of them again. There were figures in the bushes. More people were coming, but these people didn't show up at all. As they walked forward, the figures in the shadows followed them on both sides like bodyguards. They didn't show up, nor did they retreat. This made the three of them a little annoyed. After walking for a while, Chu Yang finally couldn't take it anymore. He let out a long roar and sword aura burst out from his body. He had already used the cultivation of a second stage sword sovereign and flew into the bushes on the left. Didn't you guys just want to test my cultivation before making a plan? Then I'll give you guys an answer. Wei Wuyan immediately stood still and protected Chu Lu. Chu Yang's sword light was as sharp as a dragon. Once it shot into the bushes, there were screams and blood spurting out. With a flash of sword light, Chu Yang killed his way out of the bushes on the left like a god of death. With sword light surrounding him, he was like a god of death that never tired. With blood and murderous aura all over his body, he entered the bushes on the right again. There were screams again. Chu Yang chased after them with his sword and swept through the bushes in front of him. Along the way, the smell of blood filled the air. With the sound of flapping wings, those big birds came over. The three of them walked forward. Chu Yang led the way with a murderous aura. Wei Wuyan smiled in his heart and followed quietly. This Chu Yang's scheming was indeed not to be underestimated. First, he let them follow him. Later on, he showed that he couldn't control himself. Anyone who saw him would think that he used his real martial arts in a fit of frustration and anger. But who could tell that this was a trap? Or rather, this was a bait. If he only revealed the cultivation of a second stage sword sovereign, then the one who came to deal with Chu Yang would definitely not be a super expert. At most, it would be a monarch-level expert. Then, Chu Yang could calmly practice his sword techniques again. Even Wei Wuyan wouldn't be able to tell that Chu Yang was just pretending if he didn't know about it beforehand. Indeed. After a moment of silence, a gloomy voice said, "I was wondering who was so daring to kill our men. It turns out to be a young genius swordsman, the sword emperor of a generation." Chu Yang sneered, "My people? Which branch are you from?" The shadow was silent again. After a long while, that voice said slowly, "You don't need to know which branch I'm from. Little one, you only need to know that it's a piece of cake for me to kill you, a sword sovereign." Before the voice died away, a black shadow suddenly fell from above with a violent gust of wind. A black light flew towards Chu Yang's forehead as fast as lightning. In this dark and gloomy black blood forest, such an attack was actually like a ghost. Chapter 899. Chu Yang snorted and thought in his heart, "A mere martial emperor." Straightening his body, he charged forward, his long sword carrying a cold glint as it suddenly struck out, colliding head-on with the black light. Chu Yang tilted his body and retreated 3 steps diagonally. Even he himself didn't realize that his mentality had quietly changed. When Chu Yang was in the lower 3 heavens, his heart would suddenly tremble when he saw a martial king. A martial king. When Chu Yang was in the lower 3 heavens, his pupils would suddenly light up when he faced a martial emperor. A martial emperor. But now, Chu Yang was only a 5th grade sword sovereign. When he was facing a sneak attack from a martial emperor, he actually thought, a mere martial emperor. I really don't know how the word mere popped up in King of Hell Chu's mind. That person suddenly somersaulted in the air upon contact. The next moment, he was already following Chu Yang like a shadow. He said eerily, "A second stage sword sovereign is nothing more than this." Chu Yang's long sword was like the wind. He repeatedly stabbed and clashed with the opponent's weapon hundreds of times. His feet didn't falter at all. Only then did he realize that the black light in this person's hand was actually a long and narrow saber. This person should have been following them secretly for a long time. He wasn't sure of their cultivation and didn't attack until Chu Yang suddenly showed his cultivation. He only dared to show himself when he felt confident. Speaking of which, this person was quite careful in his actions. But the words branch master from the opponent's mouth made Chu Yang interested. Could it be that this black blood forest is actually filled with gangs? He's actually a branch master. I wonder which gang he's a branch master of? But when Chu Yang saw that a person with such cultivation actually became a branch master of this gang, he was half relieved. The position of a branch master wasn't very high, but it was still a high-level cadre. Generally speaking, above the branch master was the hall master. Above the hall master were the elders, guardians, and so on. Then there was the branch master. Branch masters were martial emperors. Then, no matter how powerful this branch master was, he was only a first or second stage martial saint. With such cultivation, Wei Wuyan could totally deal with him easily. Chu Yang was relieved. He originally wanted to spend more time with the opponent so that he could comprehend his own state. But when he saw that the opponent was actually using a long saber, Chu Yang lost some interest. The rotation of the long sword suddenly slowed down. The state of unceasing water flow once again emanated from his hand. A gentle twisting force spread out in the air. Wei Wuyan was watching the battle from the side. His eyes flashed as he thought to himself, "This weird sword technique is starting again." The two of them fought fiercely. But after a while, the battle slowed down under Chu Yang's control. It was like a deep and calm river. Although it was flowing majestically, there were no waves on the surface. It was not as intense as before. As Wei Wuyan watched, he felt that something was wrong. Because Chu Yang's sword became slower and slower. Slowly, it seemed to have entered a realm that made Wei Wuyan envious. Dao realm. The Dao realm actually appeared again. Moreover, as Chu Yang's sword moves became smoother and smoother, that kind of Dao state became deeper and deeper. Wei Wuyan looked at Chu Yang dumbfounded. He couldn't help but want to cry. This kind of Dao state only appeared once when he was besieged after breaking through to the 7th stage of the martial saint level. It was that enlightenment that allowed his spiritual cultivation to reach the peak of the 7th stage of the martial saint level. Before that, he also integrated all the martial arts principles. Therefore, he was able to break through to the 8th stage of the martial saint level within 5 years, creating a cultivation legend. Since then, he couldn't enter that kind of state no matter how hard he tried. But Wei Wuyan was already very satisfied. He knew how rare that kind of Dao realm was. It was already a great blessing for him to be able to get it once. But at this moment, Wei Wuyan saw with his own eyes that Chu Yang actually entered that kind of Dao realm in 2 consecutive battles in less than 4 hours. He was too speechless. This was a Dao realm that could only be encountered by chance. You can't treat it as a meal. So, when he saw that Chu Yang actually pierced the throat of the man in black without hesitation after gaining the upper hand, Wei Wuyan's whole body twitched. What was called recklessly wasting natural resources. That was it. This was absolutely an unforgivable recklessly wasting natural resources. In the previous battle, it was still acceptable if you didn't know that this was the Dao realm. But now that you already know, it was too inexcusable. How can you waste good things like this? This was simply intolerable. After all, when I, Old Wei, found out that I've entered the Dao realm, the battle that should have ended in half a day actually dragged on for 3 days. I only ended the battle when I was certain that the lingering aura had completely disappeared and I was certain that it wouldn't come back anymore. Now, after Chu Yang found out that he had entered the Dao realm, he actually finished off the enemy so cleanly with a sword. Brother, it's shameful to waste things. Chu Yang sheathed his sword. When he turned his head, he saw Wei Wuyan's weird expression. His face was distorted. One of his eyes was bigger than the other. He was looking at Chu Yang weirdly. The corners of his eyes were twitching. His 2 hands were stretched forward and his teeth were clenched. It seemed that he wanted to rush up and beat Chu Yang up. King of Hell Chu was stunned. Old Wei, what's wrong with you? Are you possessed? It didn't matter if he didn't ask. Now that he asked, Wei Wuyan finally exploded. He stepped forward, pointed at Chu Yang's nose and scolded, "What's wrong with me? I'm possessed? Bullshit. You're the one who's possessed. You're a bastard who wastes things. You? How can you be so wasteful? Wei Wuyan's expression was as if he was indignant that his most precious thing was thrown away like trash. What's wrong again? Chu Yang was extremely puzzled. He stretched out his hand, wanting to touch Wei Wuyan's forehead to see if this guy was possessed and had a fever. But Wei Wuyan slapped his hand hard to one side. I don't have a fever. Then what nonsense are you talking about? Chu Yang said discontentedly. Wei Wuyan was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He said with a hideous face, Do you know that you've entered the Tao realm again? I know. Chu Yang's answer made Wei Wuyan speechless. It's precisely because I know. I should have finished him off quickly, but I dragged on for more than 10 moves. Wei Wuyan felt that he was really going to vomit blood. Once you've entered the Tao realm, you can fight for as long as you can, idiot. Is it so easy to enter this realm? Wei Wuyan said helplessly. Chu Yang was embarrassed. You bastard. I really don't know why the heavens would give you such a rare opportunity. Wei Wuyan panted heavily. You must remember, my ancestor, in this realm, even if you stay in it for a blink of an eye, it'll be of great benefit. Sigh, forget it. You probably won't have many chances to enter this realm in the future. Sigh, who would enter the Tao realm every day? Wei Wuyan sighed and glared at Chu Yang. He turned around and sulked as he carried Chu Le on his back. He said dispiritedly, Let's go. Why aren't you walking here like a fool? Chu Yang rolled his eyes, and had no choice but to follow him inside. Along the way, Wei Wuyan still felt that it was a pity. He kept sighing and talking about, if I enter this realm, I'll do so and so, unlike you, and so on and so on. He scolded angrily. Chu Yang scratched his head and was a little puzzled. Is it really very difficult? Why do I feel that it's very easy to enter this realm? Looking at Wei Wuyan's back, Chu Yang wisely chose not to tell him. Otherwise, this guy would definitely not be able to take it and would think that Chu Yang was boasting. Then he would beat up this great benefactor who had saved his life and given him a new lease of life. Chu Yang felt that with Wei Wuyan's current mental state, it was totally possible for him to do this. Along the way, they went through 2 more battles. But these 2 battles were just harassment. Chu Yang directly wiped them out. Slowly, they went deep into the Black Blood Forest and were already close to 100 miles away. It was obvious that the sky was already dark. Chu Yang and Wei Wuyan discussed for a while and pitched the tent. Wei Wuyan ignored him. Obviously, he was feeling extremely uncomfortable. Chu Yang had to do it himself. He leaned against a big tree and pitched the tent. Wei Wuyan looked on coldly. He was still angry and didn't help at all. Chu Yang also ignored him and pitched the tent. After he came back with some wild game, he drank some wine and ate until he was full. Then he went into the tent with Chu Le and said, Old Wei, I've been fighting for a whole day and I'm very tired. You have to keep watch tonight. It's been hard on you. And I will go to sleep first. Wei Wuyan was instantly furious. What do you mean by you've been fighting for a whole day and you're very tired? If you didn't stop me from fighting, would I still need to fight for a whole day with that bunch of bastards? Now, you're actually using this as an excuse to treat me as the night watchman while you hug your sister to sleep. Wei Wuyan wanted to go forward and argue with him, but he saw Chu Yang sticking his head out of the tent again. Oh yes, Le is with me. Don't worry. You just need to keep watch. Wei Wuyan looked at him with a red face. He was so angry that he couldn't say anything. Your own sister is with you, what's there for me to be worried about? Just as he was about to speak, he saw Chu Yang smiling and retracting his head back. Chu Le's voice came from inside. Big brother? Can Elder Wei take it? It's okay, Chu Yang said casually. He's used to it. Wei Wuyan roared silently. You're the one who's used to it. Fuck, you're the one who's used to it? Who doesn't want to have a good sleep? Just as he was about to fly into a rage, there was no sound from inside. Great Bloodpayer Wei's curses were stuck in his throat. He almost fell sick from holding it in. He thought to himself, if it weren't for Lu, I would have taught you a lesson tonight. As everyone knew, the night was the most chaotic time in the Black Blood Forest. Wei Wuyan was depressed and angry. He didn't have a peaceful night. guaranteed second update. Monthly votes. Chapter 900. This night, the experts of the Black Blood Forest moved out frequently and attacked from advantageous terrains. Wei Wuyan gloomily fought alone for a whole night. He vented all his resentment and depression on these insensible guys. He didn't know how many people he had killed in this night. Wei Wuyan sighed. What a loss. Many of them were famous figures on the Blood Payers' bounty list. Even the worst of them could be exchanged for thousands of purple crystals. This was especially true for the faction leader, who was a first-stage martial saint. The price was even higher. Now, he had to go deep into the Black Blood Forest to get medicine with this bastard. He wouldn't be able to get out for half a month. The heads would rot. It was equivalent to thousands of purple crystals growing wings and flying away. Wei Wuyan fought for a whole night. In the tent, Chu Yang's rhythmic snoring also sounded for a whole night. He wasn't worried at all and didn't come out to take a look. Why didn't he wake this guy up? At dawn, Wei Wuyan looked at the hundreds of corpses lying around. He leaned on his sword and sighed to the sky. Damn. The next morning, King of Hell Chu came out of the tent and exclaimed, "You're too cruel. You killed so many people." Wei Wuyan looked up at the sky speechlessly. You think I'm so willing to kill people? Damn. Have you figured it out? Chu Yang smiled. Which gang in the Black Blood Forest belongs to? Wei Wuyan said angrily, this is a gang at the periphery of the Black Blood Forest. It's called the Black Tiger Gang. It's very old-fashioned. Their boss's name is Yun Heihu, which is a bullshit name. We've already killed all of them. Chu Yang said lightly, I just want to know how many gangs there are here. Definitely a lot. Wei Wuyan sighed, and the deeper we go, the harder it is to deal with them. There's basically no more gangs when we're about 1,800 miles deep. That's the heart zone. We've only walked for 200 miles now. Chu Yang frowned and said, the gang we've met is already a first-stage martial saint. Wei Wuyan nodded. He was about to sigh when he suddenly became furious. So you heard everything last night. Chu Yang smiled and touched his chin, saying, I can't come out. Oh, will be scared inside if I come out. Wei Wuyan was speechless. Following Chu Yang's suggestion, the three of them quickened their pace. Wei Wuyan carried Chu Luk on his back and sped along. Before the people of the Black Blood Forest could even react, they had already advanced another 400 miles. In this area, day and night were basically blurry. However, what made the two of them feel strange was that when they arrived at this place, the people they met actually avoided them and even made way for them from afar. It was as if he was afraid of provoking them. This made Wei Wuyan and Chu Yang very surprised. These guys are definitely not people who are afraid of trouble. Moreover, the deeper they went, the more experts there were. Why were they avoiding the two of them like snakes and scorpions when they saw them? In this place, all auras were blocked. The two of them did not have such a deterrent effect at all. The two of them were puzzled, but they could only continue forward. However, even though he was puzzled, Chu Yang still made a lot of money when he was supposed to. Moreover, the speed of Chu Yang's wealth made Wei Wuyan dumbfounded. Often, when they were walking, Chu Yang would suddenly jump into the bushes, squat down and dig something with his sword. Wei Wuyan went over to take a look and was stunned. A stalk of ginseng. After walking for a while, Chu Yang jumped into the roadside again. Wei Wuyan went over to take a look. A stalk of blood essence. One must know that the quality of elixirs in the Black Blood Forest was much higher than those in the outside world. The ground here was as hard as steel. If elixirs wanted to take root and grow here, they would need hundreds of times more energy and spiritual energy than those in the outside world. Therefore, elixirs were rare here. But as long as there were elixirs, their effects would be extraordinary. The effect of a 10-year-old ginseng here was comparable to that of a 1,000-year-old spiritual ginseng outside. Moreover, there were quite a lot of people here. Everyone was experienced in the martial world. Which one of them didn't know about elixirs? Since these people came down from the first floor, they must be very secretive. Since they were secretive, they must be quite old. Therefore, Chu Yang's gains were so huge that he was grinning from ear to ear. Take the 30 to 40 stalks of elixirs that Chu Yang collected in just half a day as an example. Every stalk of elixir could cause a sensation in the outside world. The 50-year-old ginseng that Chu Yang collected at the beginning was only as thick as a chopstick. Its whole body was black and crystal clear. According to Wei Wuyan's estimation, this one stalk of elixir definitely wouldn't cost 1,000 purple crystals outside. And among Chu Yang's gains, this one was the worst. The only thing that Wei Wuyan couldn't understand was, how did Chu Yang discover it? Even if it wasn't pitch black here, it was close enough. All the flowers, plants and trees were black. There was no other color at all. Even the roots of the ginseng were black. The weeds were at least several feet high. Even if Chu Yang had eagle eyes, he definitely wouldn't be able to recognize it. Not to mention that he discovered it while he was running. This was even more unimaginable. Wei Wuyan stared at Chu Yang's actions with his eyes wide open. The two of them walked forward at lightning speed. But, the next moment, Chu Yang turned a corner with a schwa sound and arrived at a large forest. He dug beside a large rock behind a big tree. Then, he threw out the big black rock with a bang sound. Underneath, there was a stalk of black elixir. Good stuff, a 2,000-year-old black blood ginseng. Chu Yang's eyes lit up and he drooled. How many years is 2,000 years in the outside world? I'm really rich now. Now, in Chu Yang's eyes, the black blood forest had become a huge treasure trove. Although elixirs were rare here and could only be found in the most secret of places after walking very far, every stalk of elixir was of good quality. Moreover, every elixir in the black blood forest couldn't be found in the outside world. It wasn't that such species didn't exist, but because of their color and effects, the elixirs in the black blood forest were absolutely unique. Seeing that Chu Yang was busy, Wei Wuyan stood still. Finally, he took this opportunity to ask humbly, Chu Yang, how did you discover these elixirs? Chu Yang rolled his eyes. Wei Wuyan hurriedly said, don't use words like good eyesight to brush me off. This is under the big rock and there are several turns. I don't believe that you can see it. Chu Yang was stunned for a moment. He thought, then what should I say? I can't tell you that I'm the Tribulation Sword Master and there's a sword spirit in my body. He can see everything with a glance. After thinking for a long time, Chu Yang still decided that he couldn't reveal his secret. Looking at Wei Wuyan, Chu Yang said solemnly, Brother Wei, I've told you, but you must keep this a secret for me. Wei Wuyan's heart itched and he said, of course. Chu Yang said, have you noticed my nose? My nose is gifted. As long as there's any elixir within a radius of 100 feet, I can automatically smell it. Minister Chu pointed at his own nose and said in a serious manner. Wei Wuyan looked at Chu Yang's nose suspiciously and clicked his tongue. There's actually such a wonderful nose in the world. I've really never heard of it. The world is so big. There are many things you haven't heard of. Chu Yang snorted and said, otherwise, why do you think my teacher accepted me as a disciple? You should know that I'm a divine doctor, right? Humph, it's all because of my nose. Wei Wuyan suddenly realized. I see. No wonder, no wonder. He nodded repeatedly. As a doctor, it's inevitable to deal with elixirs. It's indeed much more convenient to have such a nose. This nose is much more useful than a dog's nose. Chu Yang was surprised. After a while, he said with a black face, your nose is worse than a dog's. Chu Le burst into laughter. Wei Wuyan snorted. He suddenly remembered that he only saw Chu Yang digging and didn't see him put it there. With so many elixirs on his back, it was probably as big as a small mountain. Then, he thought of something and said, Chu Yang, you actually have a holy treasure for storage? Chu Yang sighed and said, I'm ashamed that you can see through it. Wei Wuyan rolled his eyes and thought, if I can't see through it, then I'm really blind. Chu Yang kept the elixirs. The two of them continued to move forward as usual. Along the way, no one came out to interrogate them, nor did anyone come out to fight them. In fact, there wasn't even anyone who spoke. Wherever the two of them went, there was complete silence. It was still the same even after they had gone 1,200 miles deep. Although Chu Yang was constantly making a fortune and constantly filling the tribulation space with elixirs, the quality of the elixirs was also getting higher and higher. but he was always on guard in his heart. He had just entered the Black Blood Forest when he was attacked. It didn't make sense for him to go so deep into the forest as if he was walking on flat ground. There must be something fishy about this. But no matter how Chu Yang racked his brains, he still couldn't figure out what exactly was going on. Brother Wei, why do you think the journey is so peaceful? Chu Yang frowned and said with some uneasiness and dissatisfaction. His original intention was to train his martial skills. Without any battles along the way, wasn't this equivalent to a tour? Damn it, if this was a tour, why would he come to such a gloomy and terrifying place for a tour? I don't know either, Wei Wuyan said, but there must be a reason behind this. It's just that we haven't figured it out yet. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and thought, what nonsense. It's as good as not saying anything at all. Such a situation would only happen during the internal ranking competition of the Black Blood Forest, which is held once every 100 years. But the last competition was only 10 years ago, and it's far from the time of the competition. Another possibility is that an accident has happened in the Black Blood Forest. Wei Wuyan frowned and pondered for a long time. But he still couldn't figure out the reason. Chu Yang frowned and said, now that we've gone 1,200 miles deep into the forest and are about to reach the heart of the forest, no one has stopped us. This is too strange. If it's not a great opportunity, then it's a great danger. Wei Wuyan nodded slowly and said with a heavy face, I think so too. Both of them looked at each other and felt the heaviness in each other's hearts. There was an indescribable pressure. Just at this moment, an idea flashed across Chu Yang's mind. His hair stood on end and he said, Old Wei, in your opinion, could it be? Third update. I still owe you 2 chapters, but I only have slightly more than 2 hours left. I'm going crazy. Chapter 901. Wei Wuyan's face changed and he asked, could it be? As he said this, his face suddenly turned pale. Obviously, Wei Wuyan had also thought of a terrible fact. Chu Yang's eyes flashed and he said, along the way, except for the insignificant obstruction when we just entered the forest, we have actually passed through the Black Blood Forest unimpeded. And Brother Wei, firstly, you didn't expose your identity. Secondly, even if you did, you wouldn't have much deterrence here. So, there must be another reason. As Chu Yang said, Wei Wuyan's face became more and more ugly. Chu Yang turned around and looked at Wei Wuyan. Brother Wei, it seems that there's only one person who can do this in the Black Blood Forest. Wei Wuyan swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said, yes, there's only one person. His voice became a little dry. If it's really that person, why is he doing this? Chu Yang asked. Wei Wuyan let out a long sigh of relief and said, I don't know either. The two became silent. No matter what, they had already penetrated 1,400 miles. They weren't far from the centrifugal zone. If that person had deliberately let them in, then it would be impossible for them to leave at this moment. No matter what was waiting ahead, the 3 could only move forward. But their hearts were already a little heavy at this moment. As the 3 moved forward, Wei Wuyan suddenly realized that Chu Yang, this money grubber, was actually still collecting elixirs. And the frequency was very dense. Basically, he didn't let go of any elixirs that he detected. Sometimes, he even had to take a long detour to collect the elixirs. This made Wei Wuyan very puzzled. You're still in the mood to do this now? Wei Wuyan was very puzzled. Your guess shouldn't be wrong. It must be that person who's waiting to meet us. That person's cultivation is unfathomable. We're definitely not his match. And now, it's dangerous to move forward, and it's also dangerous to retreat. At this time, you're actually still collecting elixirs. I'm really convinced by your broad-mindedness. Wei Wuyan shook his head. Where did you get such confidence from? Why are you so open-minded? Chu Yang bent down and carefully put away a sparkling and translucent black blood Ganoderma. He didn't even raise his head as he said, Why can't I put it away now? Is there any difference between now and before? What's the difference between now and before? Wei Wuyan was speechless again. There was no difference between now and before, but you clearly knew that there was a mysterious and ruthless super expert waiting to make trouble for you. Yet, at this moment, you were still calmly picking herbs. If that person had malicious intentions, what use would it be even if you picked 1,000,000 stalks of heavenly treasures and earthly treasures? That won't save your life. While Wei Wuyan was pondering, Chu Yang said lightly, Brother Wei, if it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it can't be avoided. No matter what the person in front of us wants to do, we can't avoid it. Therefore, at this time, there was really no need to worry about anything. Because worrying is useless. Wei Wuyan opened his mouth and closed it again. He was right. If the person in front wants to kill me, I won't be able to escape no matter what. So, what's wrong with me picking some elixirs at this time? Chu Yang said with a smile. Wei Wuyan was stunned. Although this guy's thoughts were in the same place as his, why was it that they were completely opposite? Chu Yang smiled and said, if that person doesn't want to kill me at all, wouldn't it be profitable for me to collect more elixirs while there's no one bothering me? Wei Wuyan was stunned. This matter can be thought of like this? Chu Yang laughed and said, in my life, the only creed is to leave no regrets in this life. If I listened to you and didn't pick any elixirs because I was afraid, and that person didn't kill us in the end, wouldn't that be too regrettable? Wei Wuyan was completely speechless. At the same time, he admired Chu Yang in his heart. Although this young man is young, his mentality is much stronger than mine. No wonder he's so young. Not only does he have superb medical skills, but he's also a 5th stage sword sovereign in martial arts. No wonder, with such a mentality, what kind of difficulties can't he overcome? While Wei Wuyan was admiring Chu Yang in his heart, he heard Chu Yang laugh strangely and said, besides, even if he wants to kill me, why should I leave so many heavenly treasures for him? By then, won't he destroy them all with just one slap? If he wants to keep these elixirs after killing me, how can there be such an easy thing? Wei Wuyan almost spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned red. He pointed at Chu Yang fiercely with one finger, and his face instantly became distorted. He said with some grief and indignation, you. Wei Wuyan almost cried out of shame. This time, he really didn't have the face to see anyone. To think that I thought this little guy was so honorable and noble just now. It turns out that he's actually so vicious. I've really suffered a great loss. The speed of the 3 slowed down even more. Because young Master Chu was using all means to collect elixirs. No matter if they were grown on trees, buried underground, or hidden, they were all collected by this guy. Not only was Wei Wuyan envious, but even the experts from the Black Blood Forest who were observing the 3 of them in the dark were also envious. Their eyes were emitting green light like wolves. Damn it, we've been here for so many years. Why didn't we discover so many good things here? How did we discover all of them in such a short time? This time, we've really suffered a great loss. Just this afternoon alone, we saw him jumping left and right to dig away at least 100 elixirs. Based on this estimation, this bastard must have pocketed at least 500 elixirs in these few days. He's actually still not satisfied. Everyone gritted their teeth in hatred. Especially when they heard this guy say, if that person wants to kill me, I'll destroy them all and not leave them for them even if I die. If I can't get them, no one can get them. Everyone felt as if they had just swallowed a fly. They even had the thought of swallowing it alive. Damn it. They had seen shameless bachelors before, but they had never seen such a bachelor. He's already on his way to the guillotine, and his head is about to fall to the ground, but he's still trying to make others his scapegoat. There's really no limit to shamelessness. While everyone was cursing in their hearts, they saw Chu Yang straighten his body. He frowned and said thoughtfully, this is 1,450 miles. There are actually so many people who want to stop us from going forward. Old Wei, have you noticed that there are so many people around? These people clearly have bad intentions and don't listen to orders. Before Wei Wuyan could answer, a shout was heard from the surrounding dark forest. Dozens of experts immediately scattered like birds and beasts. Damn it, this little guy still can't find anyone to scapegoat for him. If he complains about me in front of the Lord, even if the Lord doesn't believe me, I'm afraid I'll be skinned alive. It's better to stay far away from this god of plagues. Everyone dispersed in a hubbub. Wei Wuyan was startled for a while, then he raised his thumb and said, you're ruthless. Your voice is even more powerful than that person's prestige. Chu Yang laughed and said, "It's really uncomfortable to be followed by these people all the time. It's only right to ask them to get lost." Now that there were no obstructions around him, young Master Chu collected the elixirs even more unscrupulously. His speed and accuracy shocked Wei Wuyan. This guy didn't even move forward or backward. He walked in circles to look for elixirs. As he walked in circles, he said, "There are so many elixirs. Fortunately, I walked in circles. Otherwise, I really didn't know when I'd be able to come back again. Then I'd really regret it." Wei Wuyan was amazed by this guy's shamelessness. This guy actually walked for an entire morning for a distance of more than 10 miles. All the elixirs within a radius of 100 miles were in his pocket. If Wei Wuyan could enter Chu Yang's tribulation space, he would discover to his surprise that in Chu Yang's tribulation space, there were already piles of such black and crystal-clear elixirs piled up like a mountain. Beside this mountain of herbs, there was a sword spirit who was counting the herbs with a face full of satisfaction. As he counted, he muttered to himself, "A great harvest, a great harvest. Ha! This is so satisfying. Ha!" As he counted and calculated, the sword spirit felt that even if Chu Yang stopped now, he would be able to exchange for whatever he wanted at the medicine banquet of the Zhuge clan with the medicinal herbs that he had now. Even if Chu Yang stopped now, he would still be able to exchange for whatever he wanted at the medicine banquet. And there would still be a lot of surplus, but young Master Chu obviously didn't want to stop here. He was still working hard and tirelessly. Looking at Chu Yang's vigor, Wei Wuyan absolutely believed that this guy's storage space was really too small. If it was big enough, he would store the entire black blood forest, not leaving a single bit of soil, into it. Wei Wuyan definitely didn't have any doubts about this guess. In the end, Wei Wuyan and Chu Lu leaned against a big tree and took a nap, leaving that bastard to collect elixirs by himself. After walking for another 2 days, they finally advanced another 50 miles. 1,500 miles. Chu Yang's speed of searching for elixirs became even faster and more energetic. On this day, Chu Yang was digging for a stalk of black blood red fruit. This stalk of black blood red fruit was obviously 5,000 years old. It must be known that a stalk of black blood red fruit that had grown for 5,000 years in the black blood forest was absolutely no small matter, especially the vermilion fruit. This vermilion fruit was as thick as an arm. Even its branches were already transparent, and there was a faint light flowing inside. There were 30 to 40 light green fruits growing on it, and they were obviously not ripe yet. But Chu Yang couldn't wait any longer. He had no choice but to dig up the entire vermilion fruit tree and prepare to transplant it. Just as he dug out half of it, a furious voice suddenly said, "It's fine if you dig up other ownerless things, but you actually covet my vermilion fruit tree. I really can't tolerate this. This thing is in a conspicuous place, who can't see it? You really haven't taken enough advantage of others." Chu Yang acted quickly and pretended to get up to reply. His right hand exerted force secretly and broke the roots on one side of the vermilion fruit tree. With a swoosh, he stuffed it into the tribulation space. Only then did he turn around. He couldn't help but be startled. At the same time, his eyes lit up. He saw a white-robed man standing in front of him with a face full of anger. His nose was already crooked due to his bad behavior just now. But Chu Yang didn't think of this. He only felt strange in his heart. Why does a white-robed man exist in a place like the Black Blood Forest? Chapter 902. 40 to 50 feet in front of him, a person in white stood there quietly. Along with an angry expression, Chu Yang's first reaction was, "This is really strange." A swan flew out from a flock of crows. There's actually someone in white in the Black Blood Forest. He had to admit that the clothes looked especially white in the darkness of the Black Blood Forest, and even a little dazzling. Chu Yang's second thought was, "He's only 50 feet away from me. How did he appear?" Even though his divine senses were blocked in the Black Blood Forest, he shouldn't have not discovered the other party when he was 50 feet away from him. His third thought was a little strange. Is this person male or female? How old is he? He was standing 50 feet away from Chu Yang, but his whole person seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog. He was hazy and illusory, and Chu Yang couldn't see his face clearly. There was no way to determine if he was male or female. All in all, this person didn't seem to have any obvious male or female characteristics. Even his voice was close to sexual. As for his age, it was even more impossible to tell. Then, Chu Yang remembered the other party's question. This red fruit tree was deliberately kept by the other party? This was going to be a little bad. At this moment, Wei Wen also came over with Chu Li. He couldn't help but frown when he saw the person in white. If their guesses were true, why would this person still dare to come out and stop them? He thought again. This bastard dug out the red fruit that was specially kept by the other party, and he even uprooted the whole thing. It's no wonder that the other party is angry. Since it's your first offense, I won't go too far. Plant the red fruit tree back to its original place and kowtow to me 3 times. Leave something behind for yourself, and I'll let bygones be bygones and let you pass, the person in white said lightly. This sentence instantly dispelled Chu Yang's thought that this person in white was the overlord of the Black Blood Forest. Plant it back to its original place is not a problem. Kowtow to you 3 times is also not a problem. Chu Yang laughed strangely. Then, leave something for yourself. What's that? The person in white seemed to frown and said calmly, just leave an arm and a leg behind. This is even easier. Chu Yang smiled from ear to ear and said, but what evidence do you have to prove that this red fruit tree is yours? As long as you prove it, I will kowtow to you 3 times and cut off one of my arms. The white-robed man was slightly angered. This vermilion fruit tree is in such a conspicuous position. No one has dared to touch it for thousands of years. Is that not enough proof? Far from it. Chu Yang shook his head. You said that the vermilion fruit tree is yours. If you call it, will it answer? If you can answer me, I will immediately plant it back, kowtow to you 3 times, and cut off one of its arms. Chu Yang looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. He had long seen that this red fruit tree did not belong to this person in front of him. This was because even though he was pretending to be angry, when he mentioned the vermilion fruit tree, he did not feel the slightest bit of heartache. Since he had kept such a miraculous treasure for thousands of years, how could he be so calm now that he had taken it away so roughly? If it was anyone else, they would have been furious long ago. But the man in white didn't. Before she spoke, he didn't even look at the tree pit. When the man in white heard Chu Yang's words, he slowly turned his head and looked at the silent tree pit in front of him. Looking at the few tree roots that were still oozing out juice, a wave of anger erupted from his body. Now, only the tree roots are left. The vermilion fruit tree has already been kept by you. Even if I can get it to answer, it has to be here, right? Besides, it's just a damn tree. Who can get it to answer me? The man in white slowly turned his head and looked at Chu Yang. Good plan. Chu Yang laughed. Same to you. But you are playing with words in front of me. You have found the wrong person. With a swoosh, the white-robed man was already above his head. This sweep was extremely fast. His white robe fluttered and spread out in the pitch-black sky. It was like a white crane soaring into the heavens. With a swoosh, the wind whistled and a slap came down. Chu Yang was already prepared. He raised both his arms. With a bang, Chu Yang retreated continuously. He only felt that his arms were about to break. There was an indescribable piercing pain. The man in white did a big somersault in the air. Instead of retreating, he leaped up. With one hand behind his back, the other hand came down with a swoosh. His movements were natural and unrestrained. It was actually pleasing to the eye and extremely beautiful. Before Chu Yang finished retreating, the other party's attack had already arrived. His movements were so fast that it was simply shocking. But Chu Yang's heart was calm. This person's cultivation was at most at the 7th or 8th stage of the martial emperor level. Because in terms of cultivation alone, there wasn't much difference. Although the other party wouldn't use his full strength in the first move, Chu Yang still had sword techniques that he hadn't used yet. Seeing that the other party didn't relax at all, Sword Master Chu sneered. He silently unsheathed his long sword and welcomed the attack with a cold light. The tip of the sword was facing upwards. If the man in white slapped his palm down, his palm would probably be pierced through by the long sword before it could hit Chu Yang. Chu Yang wouldn't care about the words, "If you don't use your weapon, I won't use mine. What's the point of worrying about my identity? Anyway, I don't have any identity. Even if I do, I have to protect my life first." Therefore, Sword Master Chu took out his long sword when the other party was barehanded. Cunning little thing. The man in white snorted coldly. The side of his palm that was slashing downwards had already turned into a claw. His 5 fingers were like a pair of pliers as he clawed at the sword. Chu Yang sneered. His long sword spun like a whirlwind and shot out tens of thousands of sword lights. The white-robed man snorted in surprise. Then he turned around and retreated. He didn't have any leverage in the air. As if he was stepping on air, he pulled his rapidly falling body back, or rather, bounced back. Chu Yang's heart trembled. This person is definitely not a martial emperor. He's at least a first or second stage martial monarch. I thought you were a second stage sword sovereign. I didn't expect you to be a third stage sword sovereign. The man in white looked coldly at Chu Yang and said lightly. The sword light lotus cut that Chu Yang used just now was the signature move of a third stage sword sovereign. Before Chu Yang could say anything, the man in white had already pounced on him again. This time, it was as if a storm was raining down at the same time. Chu Yang was suddenly suppressed to the point that he couldn't breathe. With a thought, he unleashed his soft water sword intent. The sword momentum spread out slowly. Instantly, it was as if a still water flow was deep and dense. It looked slow, but it had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. The man in white snorted coldly. This sword technique is indeed strange. His white robe fluttered. He actually followed Chu Yang's sword intent and sword energy to launch an attack. Chu Yang was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. My soft water sword insight has a negligible effect on this person, whereas I'm still in an extremely dangerous situation. He wholeheartedly displayed the soft water sword intent, using all his strength to deal with the opponent's mercury-like attacks. Slowly, he entered a state of complete concentration, paying no attention to everything around him. What he saw, what he heard, and what he felt with his divine sense were all the opponent's attacks. At one side, Wei Wuyan couldn't help but exclaim softly. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief, and then rubbed them again and again. His pair of eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Chu Yang had actually entered the Tao realm once again in this battle. That was extremely mysterious. An ordinary expert might not even have the chance to enter the Supreme Battle realm several times in their lifetime. In an instant, Wei Wuyan only felt that he was dreaming. His body actually swayed twice. Chu hurriedly supported him out of kindness. "Elder Wei, what's wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me?" Wei Wuyan's heart was full of bitterness. "Can I say that I've been completely shocked by your big brother, that freak, that I've lost my mind?" What Wei Wuyan didn't notice was that at the moment when Chu Yang entered the Tao state, the eyes of the man in white suddenly burst out a mass of colorful light. It was only for a moment, and then it disappeared again. Immediately, his attacks became even more violent. Chu Yang was suppressed by him all along. The two of them fought over and over again. The man in white first had the upper hand in the battle. Then, it seemed that Chu Yang had won back 10% of the battle, and it became 80% of the battle. Immediately, the battle scene became 50-50 again, with each side attacking and defending. But this situation only lasted for a short period of time, and it became 40%. Chu Yang was 40%, and the man in white had the upper hand. After fighting for a while, the man in white's attacks became stronger, and Chu Yang's situation took a turn for the worse again. The man in white had the upper hand in 70% of the battle again. At this level, it seemed that everything was completely fixed. From then on, the man in white had the upper hand in 70% of the battle, while Chu Yang only had the upper hand in 30%. Even Wei Wuyan, who was watching the battle, could only see that Chu Yang was in a very dangerous situation now, but it wasn't fatal. Moreover, he was still in the Tao state, and his life would definitely not be in danger. So, he was neither anxious nor willing to disturb him. This was the Tao state. Wei Wuyan didn't know that this 30/70th split was really the area where Chu Yang's soft water sword intent could exert its power the most, but it was also the area where it was least likely to hurt the opponent. The meaning of soft water sword intent was to focus on defense. Since the offense only took up 30% of the battle, then naturally, the defense would take up 70% of the battle. On such a basis, the soft water sword intent had a watertight defense on one hand, but on the other hand, it had a continuous and dense attack. Moreover, when one was immersed in the Tao state, as long as the battle didn't end, one would continue to be immersed in it. Because although Chu Yang looked to be in a difficult situation, he was actually as steady as a mountain. Moreover, his heart was filled with the emotions and joy of the battle. He even had time to figure out his own understanding of the sword momentum in this Tao state. When he used it again, the situation would be different again. The man in white was like a piece of white cloud floating here and there. No matter how Chu Yang increased his power, he still couldn't do anything to the man in white. He maintained 70% of the battle accurately and was unshakable. Chu Yang had been attacking with the cultivation of a third-stage sword sovereign from beginning to end. The battle between the two actually continued like this. In the eyes of outsiders, such a battle seemed very normal, and there was nothing special about it. However, only the white-robed man himself knew why he was doing this and why it was so difficult for him to do so. To let Chu Yang enter the Tao state with all his might and then maintain a 30/70 battle, so that the guy at the side wouldn't rush up to disturb him. He really had to take into account all aspects to create the current situation. The difficulty of this was thousands of times greater than winning this battle. First update. Cough, I fought hard for 3 days and was happy for 1 day. Then I got my ass kicked. There's nothing to say, I can only continue to fight. Today's update is late, because something happened. In the afternoon, I received news that Sister Feng's grandmother passed away. I sent her to her parents' house and came back. Chapter 903. This battle lasted for 1.5 days. Towards the end, Chu Yang couldn't hold on any longer. Just when he felt that his cultivation was about to be exhausted, the white-robed man suddenly yelled and jumped out of the battle circle. He said angrily, "You're indeed capable. Wait and see." Suddenly, he rose up and circled in the air. Then, he disappeared without a trace. Chu Yang used his long sword to draw 2 more times. Then he finally stopped. He spun 2 rounds in a daze. Then, he sat down on the ground and gasped for breath. Then, he laughed and said, "That was so satisfying." Although he had been defending more than attacking in this battle, he really fought to his heart's content. He used all his skills and dug out all his potential. After this battle, the soft water sword intent was already infinitely mature. And Chu Yang understood a lot from the comprehension of the Tao state. In fact, Chu Yang was even secretly hoping that this white-robed man would come again and fight like this again. Chu Yang longed for such a battle. This was because his cultivation had increased too quickly. He had reached the 4th stage of the Sword Sovereign realm from the 5th stage of the Martial Emperor realm. The experience he gained during this period was really nothing to write home about. And in this battle, he had been fighting as a 3rd-grade Sword Sovereign. Unknowingly, all his comprehension of the 3rd-grade Sword Sovereign had been integrated in this battle. Moreover, he had a deeper understanding of the power of the Tao state. Chu Yang panted heavily. Wei Wuyan walked over. "How was it?" "Awesome." Chu Yang laughed out loud and said, "This battle was really satisfying. Both my body and mind are very happy." Wei Wuyan said speechlessly, "Tao state, Tao state." He suddenly had an idea. "You take a rest and fight with me." Seeing that Chu Yang entered the Tao state in each of the 3 battles, Wei Wuyan suddenly had an idea. Could it be that in this black blood forest, he could enter the Tao state as long as he fought? His heart was itching. Chu Yang was also very interested. He said, "I'll take a rest and fight with you. After a while." "Come on." Wei Wuyan was eager to try. "Good. Take this." Chu Yang laughed. "After a while." Wei Wuyan was depressed. Because Chu Yang entered the Tao state again. And he didn't. What's going on? Wei Wuyan was puzzled. Again. Alright. I'm so depressed. Again. Okay. What happened? You've already gone in 5 times. Why haven't I gone in even once? Wei Wuyan was furious. Again. Sweat. Again. Wei Wuyan gritted his teeth and his eyes turned red. Sir, please spare me. Chu Yang lay paralyzed on the ground with his 4 limbs facing the sky. His face was pale and his hands and feet were trembling. I'm so tired. I can't take it anymore. Wei Wuyan didn't give up. Men can't say no. Get up. Fight me again. Chu Yang's whole body twitched. A man can't say no to a woman, but you're a man. I'm really not interested. Wei Wuyan looked up to the sky and sighed. Why is it so difficult for me to enter the Tao realm once? Chu Yang said speechlessly, you're already a half-step supreme martial artist. Tell me, you suppressed your cultivation to fight with me. What kind of comprehension can you have? How can you enter the Tao realm? Wei Wuyan's whole body trembled, and he was suddenly enlightened. That's right. It must be so. Not only him, but a white figure in the distance also shuddered. That's right. It must be so. Chu Yang lay on the ground and said with endless charm, it's a pity that the man in white just now can only deal with my 3rd stage sword sovereign. If I raise my cultivation to 4th stage, he may not be able to hold on. It's a bit of a pity. Wei Wuyan said disdainfully, you should be content to be able to enter the Tao realm for a whole day and a half. You still want to use others to continue to break through? You're thinking too much. Chu Yang laughed. In the distant darkness, the white figure moved and muttered to himself, he can continue to break through? Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. The 3 rested for a long time before they left this messy place. Chu Yang pulled out a water sack and gulped it down with a gudong gudong sound. The sweat from the battle just now almost made Sword Master Chu dehydrated. The 3 of them started their journey from a day ago again. Wei Wuyan was thinking hard as he carried Chu Luthra on his back. And Chu Yang continued to search for elixirs with his eyes shining brightly. On this day they walked for 50 miles. It was getting more and more gloomy and dark in front of them. They were about to reach the central area. Little thief, give me back my red fruit tree. A white figure descended from the sky and slapped towards Chu Yang fiercely. Chu Yang was already prepared. Good. He raised his sword to meet the attack, and the 2 instantly got into a fight. This time, the cultivation of the man in white seemed to have improved greatly. He actually faintly reached the 2nd or 3rd stage martial monarch level, making Chu Yang, who was a 3rd stage sword sovereign, unable to breathe. Chu Yang made up his mind and raised his cultivation by 1 level in an instant. Sword light shot out like a bolt of lightning. 4th stage sword sovereign. The man in white seemed a little excited. You've also improved. Chu Yang sneered. Why can't I? So what if you've improved? You'll still die in my hands. The man in white sneered. Not necessarily. Chu Yang raised his cultivation to the 4th stage sword sovereign level, and the sound of raging waves had already begun to surge like wind and thunder. Let's see who'll die in whose hands. The man in white didn't speak anymore, and only intensified his attacks. Chu Yang was fully focused, and he countered the man's moves as they came. The man in white's moves were extremely slippery, and he couldn't grasp them at all. At first, Chu Yang thought that it would be a pity if he killed the man in white, but gradually he forgot everything and was fully immersed in the battle. Wei Wuyan, who was at the side, pulled his hair and sighed. Tao state. Tao state again. He's in it again. There was another person who was equally depressed, the man in white. The man in white looked at Chu Yang's long breaths and the mysterious Tao state aura emitted from his body. He was also furious. Why is it so easy for him to enter the Tao state? He increased the speed of his attacks, but Chu Yang also increased the intensity of his sword light. From the beginning to the end, yesterday's battle was repeated again, 70%. It was still 70%. It was so accurate that there wasn't any change in the slightest. Chu Yang used 30% of his attacks, while the man in white used 70%. The man in white was still suppressing Chu Yang in the battle. Moreover, in the middle of the battle, the man in white actually closed his eyes and fought with Chu Yang, who was in the Tao state, purely based on his senses. Moreover, if someone could see through his disguise, he would discover that the expression on his face seemed to be in deep thought. Such an expression was no different from Wei Wuyan's expression at the side. This battle lasted for another day and night. In the end, Chu Yang was already sweating profusely. He couldn't help but want to raise his cultivation to the level of a 5th stage sword sovereign to continue the battle. At this moment, the man in white laughed. "Let's fight again tomorrow. I won't let you have an easy time tomorrow." His figure rose and a white figure flashed. Like a whirlwind, he disappeared without a trace. Chu Yang was panting heavily. But a strange feeling suddenly arose in his heart. What's the intention of this man in white? Why does his fighting style seem to be purely helping me to stabilize my cultivation and comprehend sword techniques? Is this person really so kind? But if not, why is he doing this? Chu Yang pondered, but he quickly threw this question to the back of his mind. No matter what his motive is, he won't disappear. He'll come again tomorrow. No matter what, he'll say it in the end. And such a battle is infinitely beneficial to me. What's wrong with fighting a few more times? Currently, the most important thing is to find elixirs. The more elixirs I have, the more confident I'll be when I walk out of this black blood forest. It's possible for the sword spirit to steal elixirs, but in the big clans that know the Tribulation Sword Master very well, it's hard to guarantee that he won't be recognized or suspected. Even if there's only a little bit of suspicion, his concealment will become completely meaningless. Therefore, it's better to search for elixirs in a blessed place like the Black Blood Forest. Therefore, after this battle, not only did Sword Master Chu's search for elixirs not slow down, but it became even crazier. From a radius of 100 miles to a radius of 500 miles, and other than the central area in front, it seemed to be expanding towards a radius of 1,000 miles. Such a terrifying sweep made all the experts in the Black Blood Forest shed tears. Too ruthless. He's directly scraping the ground. Besides, brother, it's fine even if you only collect the top-grade elixirs, but this master doesn't even let off the elixirs that are 8 to 10 years old. The more you scoop into the basket, the better. This made them even more speechless. Do you want us to live or not? Damn it, if we get injured in the future, we won't even be able to find any medicine in the Black Blood Forest. But there were orders from the higher-ups that they weren't allowed to deal with this brat. They were to let him pass quietly. Therefore, everyone could only stare and swallow their saliva as they watched. Wow! Chu Yang finally couldn't help but let out a surprised cry. This cry made the hearts of all the experts in the Black Blood Forest twitch. Another treasure has been found. And it's definitely a good treasure. This brat has been spoiled by the Black Blood Forest during this period of time. Ordinary treasures can't even surprise him anymore. In a dark place, Chu Yang found a small milky white tip. This milky white tip made Chu Yang overjoyed at the unexpected good news. Because he recognized this thing. Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng. After discovering this thing, even the sword spirit in the tribulation space did 2 somersaults to express his excitement. This was the Black Blood Forest. The ground was so hard, and this Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng grew in the Black Blood Forest and was actually white. How many years did it take to grow? At the very least, it wouldn't grow to this size in 3 to 5,000 years. And 3 to 5,000 years in the Black Blood Forest. It couldn't be compared to the outside world. Such a thing was definitely something that one could only come across by chance in the entire heavenly layer. Even with Chu Yang's composure, his heart couldn't help but beat violently. Then he walked over carefully and carefully. Second update. Begging everyone for monthly votes. Monthly votes Chapter 904. I've made a mistake in the previous chapter. Chu Yang should be from Martial King to 4th grade Sword Sovereign. I've written from Martial Emperor to Martial Emperor. Thanks to Reincarnation for your reminder. Chu Yang faintly felt that there seemed to be quite a number of people around him watching his actions. But strangely, no one came out to stop him. Chu Yang kept his guard up and started to dig carefully. Under the sword spirit's reminder, he used a wisp of sword energy as a rope to tie the milky white tip of the jade snow spirit ginseng. The sword spirit faintly felt that this jade snow spirit ginseng already had spirituality. Within a radius of 200 miles of this jade snow spirit ginseng, there were no other elixirs. In a place like the Black Blood Forest, this jade snow spirit ginseng could actually monopolize the underground spiritual energy within a radius of 200 miles. This showed how strong its medicinal effects were. Such a heavenly treasure definitely had spirituality. So, after Chu Yang wrapped the sword energy around it, he clearly felt that this jade snow spirit ginseng trembled a little, as if it wanted to break free. But because of the entanglement of the sword energy, it felt a piercing pain. So, it stopped moving after that, as if it had already accepted its fate. A drop of dew quietly rolled out from the milky white tip of the jade snow spirit ginseng. As if it had sensed that its life was coming to an end, it was crying. A despairing atmosphere suddenly pervaded this place, and even made Chu Yang's heart feel distressed. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you," Chu Yang said in a low voice with his divine sense. "I have more suitable land and spiritual energy for you to grow here. You won't regret following me." The jade snow spirit ginseng stopped moving, but the surrounding atmosphere was still gloomy, as if it had no choice but to accept its fate. Chu Yang smiled in his heart. "Little thing, you'll only be surprised later." This thing indeed had spirituality. No wonder it wasn't discovered by anyone. And it even stealthily stole the Earth's spiritual energy within a radius of 200 miles. Chu Yang started to dig carefully. He started to dig a hole 10 feet away from the perimeter. He dug all the way down to a depth of 50 feet before he started to lift it up slowly from the bottom. During this process, Chu Yang seemed to have heard a slight sound. But when he looked around, he didn't find anything. So he didn't care about it and continued with his work. A few hundred feet away, a few experts from the Black Blood Forest trembled as they looked at the corpse in front of them. They simultaneously knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. These people were finally tempted when Chu Yang discovered this jade snow spirit ginseng just now. This was a unique treasure in the world. The person who was lying on the ground was the strongest among them. He was an 8th grade martial saint. They were also one of the overlords of the Black Blood Forest. When he saw that Chu Yang had found the jade snow spirit ginseng, he had already soared up and was about to fly out to snatch it. His idea was very simple. "I won't hurt him. I just want this jade snow spirit ginseng. Take it and run." However, just as his body rose into the air, a fine white light suddenly shot over and nailed this 8th grade martial saint to the ground. Without a sound. When everyone went forward to take a look, they saw that a fine white cloth had been inserted into the temple of this 8th grade martial saint. It went in from the left temple and came out from the right temple. There were no bloodstains on either side. The white cloth was as white as before. After checking his injuries, they realized that his entire head had already turned into tofu dregs, and his dantian had been shattered. This white cloth actually released 2 forces, which destroyed this person's divine sense, vitality, and cultivation at the same time. A dignified 8th grade martial saint expert, under such a thin white cloth that couldn't even strangle a mouse to death, didn't even have the chance to let out a final groan before his soul was scattered. In fact, such a way of dying was the purest way of dying. If reincarnation really existed in the world, then this person wouldn't be able to go to the reincarnation passage. He was completely dead. Everyone felt as if they were struck by lightning. A soft voice was transmitted into everyone's ears. "No one listens to what I say anymore. This really makes me feel a little sad." This sentence was indifferent and didn't show any emotions. It didn't even appear in the air, but directly entered everyone's ears. However, all the experts present immediately knelt down on the ground and kowtowed while trembling all over. They didn't even dare to beg for mercy. That voice transmitted again indifferently. "If something like this happens again, this area will be destroyed." Everyone kowtowed while trembling all over. Sweat poured down like rain. Destruction. These two words sounded very hard to understand, but only the experts in the Black Blood Forest knew. This Black Blood Forest was divided into several areas by the Lord. Every area has a person in charge. He's called the Area Master. The one who died just now was the Area Master of this area, Lord. The meaning of Area Master was, if something like this happens again, there won't be a single living person in this area. This was a complete case of implicating people. For example, if one person in this country committed a crime, then everyone in this country should be killed. Yes, that was the meaning. This was no longer just brutal, it had far exceeded the scope of brutal. The voice disappeared without a trace. It seemed that the person had left. However, the experts present seemed to hate their parents for not giving birth to them with 2 more legs. They crawled up from the ground and disappeared without a trace. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. They didn't even dare to turn back. Damn it, the Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng was good, but, no matter how good it was, could it be better than their own lives? At this moment, even if a heavenly-level miracle medicine appeared in front of them, these people definitely didn't dare to turn back. When all was silent, a white figure murmured from afar, "Such good fortune. I've been here for tens of thousands of years and I've never seen it." He saw it the moment he came. It's really rare, but Isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it? He actually said, "Isn't it?" continuously for dozens of times. His face revealed sincere nostalgia, and his eyes were filled with sorrow as if tears were about to fall from them. Then, a long sigh sounded, and this white figure finally disappeared in a flash. Chu Yang had just taken out the Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng from the ground. Thanks to the hardness and sharpness of the Tribulation Sword, he didn't have to spend too much effort. The soil on the Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng hadn't been removed, and it was still a lump of soil about 10 feet in radius. At this moment, Chu Yang heard that sigh. Chu Yang suddenly felt bitter in his heart. All the sadness and helplessness from his previous life surged into his heart at once. It was as if he saw Mo Qingwu dying in his arms. Suddenly, he felt completely disheartened. His heart ached so much that he almost wanted to cut himself with his sword. Tears streamed down his face. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit roared, "Wake up!" Chu Yang's heart shook, and he finally woke up from that sorrowful mood. However, he realized that his face was already covered in tears. What's going on? Chu Yang clearly remembered the mood just now and couldn't help but be shocked. That long sigh was still immersed in his mind for a long time. It was a kind of deep-rooted yearning, a love and deep attachment that couldn't be obtained even after the end of the world. This kind of feeling could almost make the heavens cry at the same time. But when Chu Yang asked this question, even the sword spirit who had just woken him up didn't answer. "Sword spirit, what's going on?" Chu Yang asked in his mind. "I don't know," the sword spirit answered and went silent again. Chu Yang made a sound of agreement. After a long time, he collected his thoughts and focused on handling the Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng in front of him. Bit by bit, he peeled off the black soil that was as hard as steel from the Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng. This Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng's body was covered with long snow-white whiskers, each of which was nearly 10 feet long. As the black soil was peeled off, the appearance of this Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng was gradually revealed. The body of this Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng was only the size of a palm. Its whole body was snow-white, and there was actually a faint trace of blood that was almost undetectable. It was just like human skin. Moreover, there was a faint brilliance flowing inside, just like the meridians of the human body. It had hands and feet, a nose and eyes, just like a baby that had just taken shape. On its head, there was a small milky white protrusion that was sharp. That was its branch. It was this little bit that allowed Chu Yang to discover it. Now, this little guy's facial features were wrinkled, as if it was wronged and scared. Still scared? Chu Yang smiled and said, "Sword spirit catch." Then he sent it into the tribulation space. The sword spirit caught it inside. He looked at it and couldn't bear to put it down. It's really this thing. It's really the most precious treasure in the world. he actually flicked the nose of this jade snow spirit ginseng and said, "You actually dare to throw a tantrum. Since you're here, you have to behave yourself, understand?" This little jade snow spirit ginseng's nose seemed to wrinkle even more tightly. "Little thing. You actually ignored me." The sword spirit scolded and planted it beside the vitality spring water. He dug a deep hole and gently buried the jade snow spirit ginseng in the soil without any wrinkles. But he left the jade snow spirit ginseng's little head on the ground. Then he scooped a spoonful of vitality spring water and poured it over it. Feeling the rich vitality of the vitality spring water, the jade snow spirit ginseng suddenly trembled. Then, the wrinkles on its face slowly smoothed out, and it seemed to be enjoying it. Seeing that the sword spirit only poured a spoonful of vitality spring water and then stopped, the little mouth on its face eagerly opened. It seemed to be begging, "Give me a little more, give me a little more." So greedy? The sword spirit scooped another spoonful of vitality spring water for it and said, "Little guy, you have to remember that you can use the vitality spring water, but you have to stimulate the growth of the vitality spring water. If you dare to use it all up, I'll cut you up and throw you into the vitality spring water. Do you understand?" The little tip on the jade snow spirit ginseng's little head bent slightly, as if it was nodding. It was very obedient. Then, its thin and dense roots automatically melted into the soil beside the vitality spring water. Its face revealed an extremely comfortable expression, as if it was enjoying it. Even its two arms stretched out from the soil and then fell back down. It was as if a person had suddenly arrived at a place that made him feel extremely comfortable and was cheering. Or, he was lazily stretching his waist and saying, "This place is too comfortable." Chapter 1. I'll continue to write the 4th chapter. Chapter 905. Chu Yang was walking back, and the jade snow spirit ginseng was at home. But the sword spirit was frowning and thinking deeply. He was thinking about the sigh that Chu Yang heard just now. Who was that? Who could be so powerful? Who could it be? Who could be so powerful? The sword spirit had accompanied the previous tribulation sword master for a long time on this continent. It could be said that as long as it was in the heavens, the sword spirit would know. As long as it was in the heavens, the sword spirit would know. As long as it was in the legends of the heavens, the sword spirit would know. But the sword spirit couldn't tell what kind of power was contained in this sigh. He didn't know what kind of technique was used by the person who let out the sigh. He could only instinctively feel that this person was powerful and terrifying. If there was a person who could make the sword spirit feel terrified, then who was this person? Chu Yang had thought about this question before. But the sword spirit's answer was, in this heavens, there definitely wouldn't be such a person. If the sword spirit was in his prime, he wouldn't be afraid even if he faced supreme martial artist Chen Feng and supreme martial artist Lu Yun at the same time. However, this sigh made the sword spirit feel fearful and powerful. After keeping the jade snow spirit ginseng, there were no more elixirs within a radius of 200 miles. Sword Master Chu's speed finally increased. It was getting darker and darker in front. Finally, it was so dark that he couldn't even see his own fingers. Until now, he had already traveled 1,750 miles. He had arrived at the heart of this place. There were no more people hiding in the dark nearby. There wasn't even a bug or snake on the ground. There wasn't even a bird in the sky. Other than the dark forest and dark land, it was like a silent death zone. There was no sound at all. Cha-cha-cha. Only the withered tree under their feet made a soft sound. Everything was silent. The two of them felt as if they had fallen into a nightmare at the same time. This silence was terrifying. And fighting in such an environment was even more terrifying. Divine senses were blocked and eyes couldn't see. How could they fight? Or could they only rely on their instincts? Chu Yang's heart was beating like a drum when the white shadow appeared in front of him again. This time, it was floating quietly in the air. It didn't immediately start the battle. Instead, it asked softly, "Young man, what's your name?" Chu Yang said lightly, "My name is Chu Yang." Chu Yang. The white shadow chuckled, "So your surname is Chu?" After a moment of silence, he said, Come, fight me again. Suddenly, it rushed down with a whoosh. With Chu Yang shouted. However, the other party didn't allow any explanation and directly rushed down. Although the attack this time was in the land of darkness, it was twice as fierce as the previous attacks. Chu Yang felt that he couldn't breathe as soon as he started to fight. So, he let out a loud roar and unleashed his cultivation as a 5th-stage sword sovereign. The two of them fought fiercely in this dark place. However, Chu Yang clearly felt that the opponent's attack wasn't as gentle as the previous attacks. Instead, it was as powerful as a thunderbolt. It was like a bolt of lightning striking down from the heavens, smashing a person into pieces with a single strike. This was a violent attack that was full of confidence in winning. Such confidence could only be obtained through continuous victories in a long battle. Chu Yang had already used all his power as a 5th-stage sword sovereign. Except for the tribulation sword technique, all the other martial arts that he knew, including footwork, movement, sword, saber, and so on, were unleashed together like a storm. However, he still couldn't resist the opponent's attack. Chu Yang retreated step by step. The opponent's attack became more and more violent. Suddenly, a rumbling sound was heard, and the opponent's attack connected together at this moment. Chu Yang could faintly feel that the opponent's attack was like the tide of the sea, pressing down on him. Raging waves. And he himself was like a small boat in the raging waves of the sea, which could capsize at any time. The infinite aura of death shrouded Chu Yang in an instant. If he couldn't resist it, he would be smashed into pieces in the next moment. From the darkness, Chu Yang could tell from the cold eyes of the man in white that he wouldn't show any mercy. However, Chu Yang had a strange association at this moment. The moves of the man in white were so familiar. It wasn't the moves that were familiar, but the artistic conception. He retreated continuously and tried his best to think. Finally, an idea flashed across his mind. This was the artistic conception of water. Continuous and endless, connecting heaven and earth, vast and endless, with endless power. This was, Chu Yang roared, this is the force of raging waves. With this roar, Chu Yang finally figured out what he couldn't figure out all this while. His wrist shook, and sword light and sword radiance shot out. At this moment, Chu Yang actually turned defense into offense in an absolutely disadvantageous situation. The originally continuous and dense sword light was like a sudden eruption of a mountain torrent at this moment. With a power that could destroy heaven and earth, the sword light rushed out violently. Just his sword light alone was enough to illuminate the entire area at this moment. The sword aura shot out horizontally and vertically. Chu Yang suddenly felt very comfortable in his attack. He couldn't help but roar, so the force of water can also be used like this. Pa. As he laughed, the sword light became more and more intense, and he fought back crazily. Wei Wuyan was shocked. He brought Chu Lu and retreated rapidly. They only stopped when they were 200 feet away. The sharpness of the sword aura that Chu Yang emitted at this moment made him feel that he couldn't protect Chu Lu from getting hurt if he took another step closer. This gave Wei Wuyan a huge shock. What was his cultivation? What was Chu Yang's cultivation? Why did he have such a feeling? Looking from afar, Chu Yang's sword light flowed like a river, illuminating the dark black blood forest as if it was daytime. Chu Yang, who was dressed in black, seemed to be standing in a huge light circle. He waved his sword and attacked continuously. The opponent's cultivation was obviously much higher than Chu Yang's. But at this moment, Chu Yang was standing in this light circle of sword light, not moving an inch. He was like a god of war who would never be defeated, standing proudly at this moment. Fighting proudly. You can kill me, but I can only move forward in front of you. But I won't take another step back. This was also a kind of aura. The pride of this kind of aura was even above the white-robed man's aura of victory. Because this was the determination to throw life and death to the back of his mind. Regardless of life or death, victory or defeat, his pride wouldn't change. The soft water sword intent was fully unleashed. And it seemed to be developing further and deeper. This was the enlightenment that Chu Yang had gained from the strong pressure these few days. The soft water sword intent could only be used for defense. Only when one's defense was impenetrable could one borrow force to attack. It was enough to protect oneself, but not enough to attack. But the opponent's continuous attacks made Chu Yang ponder about the next step of the soft water sword intent in his Tao state. It wasn't until the white-robed man's attack came crashing down that Chu Yang was suddenly enlightened, as if he was suddenly enlightened. The power of water wasn't just the power of soft water. Water wasn't just soft. It was also unyielding and violent. It could also destroy everything, including the entire heavens. Everyone said that fire and water were merciless. But the fury of water was far more violent than fire, and its destructive power was much stronger. The power of soft water could naturally receive attacks calmly, but what would happen when the gentle water flow encountered a high mountain or a canyon? What would happen if he were to rush down from a 1,000-feet-high cliff? This was the power that Chu Yang suddenly comprehended, the power of violent waves. The sword light shot out like lightning, and the sword light surged crazily. Chu Yang comprehended the power of violent waves, and the cultivation in his body was also flowing happily. The vital energy of heaven and earth in his meridians was also rising. In his dantian, the 4 fragments of the tribulation sword also seemed to be cheering. But Chu Yang's cultivation was no longer able to support such a huge consumption. The sword spirit in the tribulation space was constantly refining elixirs, turning the power of the elixirs into vital energy, and continuously channeling it into Chu Yang's meridians. With the violent vital energy circulating in his body, it returned to his dantian and became Chu Yang's own power. Good sword. What a fast comprehension. What a smart young man. What a high aptitude. The sword light was like lightning, and the white-robed man's eyes seemed to have become 2 purple gems, constantly flashing and attacking. However, he was sincerely praising her. Chu Yang had already entered the Tao state of selflessness. His current thoughts were only to attack. Attack again. As long as he was alive, he would not stop attacking. Both of them were attacking. A white shadow and a black shadow attacked each other in the rainbow-like sword light. Neither of them took a step back. Both of them took up half of each other's attacks. It was a 50-50 ratio. If you attack me, I'll attack you back. No one took advantage of each other. But Chu Yang's sword state was becoming more and more violent. He didn't even think about what sword force to use. He only knew to attack according to his own feelings. Attacking continuously seemed to have become the instinct of this tribulation sword master. Other than this, there was no other way that he could accept. As Chu Yang's cultivation increased like bamboo shoots after the rain, the cultivation of the white-robed man opposite him was also increasing. It seemed that no matter how high Chu Yang's cultivation level was, he would be able to cooperate with him and would never be at a disadvantage. Wei Wuyan, who was at the side, was already extremely shocked at this moment. Because he clearly felt that Chu Yang's aura in this battle was getting stronger and stronger, fiercer and fiercer. Other people would be consumed in battle, but Chu Yang was enriching himself as he fought. Why was this happening? Wei Wuyan could feel that Chu Yang's 5th stage sword sovereign realm from the beginning of the battle was increasing rapidly. Then he started to accumulate slowly, and now he was climbing to the peak step by step. It was like a taut string. As long as it broke, it would be a kind of nirvanic rebirth breakthrough. In the battle circle, Chu Yang suddenly roared, "Break?" A loud and clear sword sound suddenly appeared. It was clear and bright. Sword light rose up fiercely, and everything within a radius of a few hundred feet could be seen. The white-robed man let out a long roar and retreated lightly. He shouted, "4 hours to break through to the sword's sovereign realm? Not bad." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.